Hi, everybody. If you want to skip right to the interview, skip to 7 minutes. Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode number 32 of the VonDubCast. Got ourselves a return guest in Cugnet-Huber today. He was one of the first guests, I think one of the first 5 guests that was on the podcast. Those were episodes that I'd recorded even before I'd released the episodes or released the podcast itself. So not a lot of people knew even that I was starting a podcast, so it was very nice to have Kyle on, and he was very supportive the whole way through with the process and made me feel really comfortable having him on as one of my first guests. And then having him on a second time was even better. We got to jump right into it. I find that the first couple of minutes of most of my podcasts is just kind of settling in and getting over that awkwardness before you forget you're on mic and you're just talking and having a conversation. But we were able to jump right into it, and we had a couple of ideas that we were kicking around for this podcast even before. We were maybe even thinking of doing a specific podcast just on meditation, which we definitely covered on in some good detail right off the hop there about kind of just both of our journeys with meditation, how we do it, just because it's something I talk about a lot, but I haven't really had a place to break down for people exactly how I meditate, the different ways, what I get out of them. So just wanted to have that. And then later on in podcasts, if I want to talk about meditate, I can always just refer back, like listen to Kyle Cug's 2.0 episode and you'll hear it right there exactly how I meditate and what I get out of it. So that was really fun. And then there was a couple topics that right after Kyle was on the first time, I was like, man, we didn't even talk about your DJ career. We didn't even talk about his shoe addiction, which we got to get into, and just kind of the whole culture around Nikes and different types of shoes. And I didn't realize how far back that went and how knowledgeable Kyle was, but I just love learning new things. And when he has areas of interest that he has lots of knowledge in and I'm quite ignorant of, that's very exciting for me. Now I have a few more tidbits to drop in conversation when you get into these topics. So I've always really liked that. And also the Masters was on this weekend. I got to spend a lot of time with my buddy Chase, and he's a huge golf fan. I feel like I learned a ton of things this weekend about golf as well. It was very exciting. Just watched the last round and watched Dustin win it, and it was pretty fun. I think that'll be something that I try and watch every year if I can. That tournament, I don't think I'll be ever watching every tournament every weekend of golf, but definitely the big ones like that I could definitely get used to watching it. Maybe when this COVID stuff pisses off and get out on the courses and maybe see some of these bigger tournaments later on in life. So yeah, that was lots of fun. Really good episode. Really had a lot of fun catching up with Kyle, seeing how his summer was coming to visit Canada, going back, the kind of feelings now that he's already had around in Saudi Arabia and now heading back there. Everything, it was a bit of a time change. He was doing it right early in the morning. I was doing it late at night. So we both had a lot of coffee and tea inside of us, keeping us all hyped up, but made for a pretty fun interview. I was buzzing. I think I was up to like 2 a.m. after the fact. Couldn't fall asleep because I was too excited after recording it. And then what else is going on? Yeah, so finally got to record my first real podcast in a real podcast studio with my buddy Brendan Murphy. That'll probably be releasing next week, and it was so cool. It was just to have that experience to walk into a studio and see what it's going to feel like eventually once I can get this podcast to the point where that is a regular occurrence, where I'm always in the studio and always have cameras on and doing it the right way. It was almost emotional to do it. If I'm honest with you guys, I felt like a kid in a candy store at the start, and then all day after we had finally recorded in there, it just felt really cool. Felt like I was on the right track and just kind of a nice step forward on the path. It seems like even though I am, recording more, getting better, figuring things out along the way, those big steps of something new like that really makes it all worthwhile. So I had a ton of fun. Thanks again to Brendan. He's been helping me doing all this stuff. The YouTube page, that's all him, and it looks great. And really got to run some ideas by him as well on Friday night, and it was fun to catch up. We got to have a couple beers, which was nice. Haven't had hung out with any friends and drank for a while, so just couple 2 or 3 beers. It was a good time. Brought us back to some university memories, and just another couple guests that are from the University of Alberta and from Lister. And like I said, I hope to expand a little bit past that, but there's still a whole hell of a long list of people to come on that I found in that area that were special and need their story told. So yeah, really excited for you guys to hear this episode. Like always, if you could go on Facebook, there's a new page for the VonDubCast, Instagram, Twitter, follow those things. That'd be awesome. What else? The YouTube channel, got 13 subscribers now, going strong, really cranking that up. Got some good views on a couple of the episodes, but just starting to bring that to life. Hopefully next week we'll have an actual watchable component that isn't just the logo over top of some audio. So that's really exciting. And then hopefully I can start to bring more and more of those with regularity to the point where it's just a common factor and it's happening more often than not. So yeah, keep an eye out for that. If you can go give a subscription on YouTube, that really means a lot. It goes really far, helps to YouTube is one of those ones that gets into algorithms and kind of sends it out to people, whereas all the rest is kind of more word of mouth. And as mentioning that, if you do like an episode you hear, please, tell one or two friends if you hear something that there's a topic that somebody's into, right? We talk about shoes or DJing in this one. If you know somebody that's, into that, maybe just pass it by them. No pressure. Just bring it into their mind so that maybe if they have a road trip coming up and they need something to listen to, they can take a crack at it, and hopefully that will help spread this. The numbers have been going up a little bit lately, and it's nice to see, and I'm trying not to concentrate on that and just making sure I'm having a good product for you guys every week, and it's good content for you to listen to, and the numbers will come naturally as they will. What else? Also, like I'd been mentioned on the podcast, still looking for people, guest ideas, people that want to come on as a guest or just as a kind of a co-host. Got a couple more things finalized for formats for trying to do these new solo with a co-host episodes. Got a few episodes. Brennan really helped me flesh out the idea of that. So again, thanks to Brennan on that. And should be rolling that out in the next few weeks, maybe hopefully sometime before Christmas, and see where those go. See how that, I have a feeling I'm really going to enjoy those, but you can never tell until you get actually into them. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, that's kind of the things on the horizon. I'm really excited about it. Hope you guys are excited about it. Hope you like this episode. And I will talk to you guys on the outro. Thank you. All right. Well, thanks for being here, Kyle. Second time on the pod. How's it feel?
Oh, it feels great. Feeling like $100, man.
Nice late night here, early morning for you. Fuck, she's got the time difference all nailed down here.
Yeah, it's definitely not an ideal time difference, and then with daylight savings, it makes it even worse. But try and manage. So
yeah, get over it. So for people that are just listening or maybe missed our first episode, Kyle, you're in Saudi Arabia again.
Yeah, correct. So I've been working in Saudi Arabia I think I've been with Schlumberger actually just over a year now. So I did 2 months of training over in Abu Dhabi, and then boogied over to Saudi Arabia. So I'm working as kind of like a drilling engineer over here. So
yeah, and you were back in Canada for a little while there during kind of a little COVID hiatus, and then you've been back there for what, about a month?
yeah, so I got home. I think I left July and came back October. I had like quite a bit of vacation built up, and I'd been working in Saudi for like six months straight. So I was like to my boss, I was like, "Hey man, I got to get out of here."
Yeah.
And he's like, "Yeah, go ahead." So got home for the summer, which is awesome. Like, it wasn't your traditional summer, but still made the best of it. Got to see lots of friends, lots of camping, lots of hiking, all the good things. So
yeah. Yeah, that goes a long way when you've been away from home for a long time. Just like, even if it's nothing special, you're kind of COVID restricted. Still probably nice to see everybody. Hey, a little touch of home, some home cooked food, not just making your own KD in the little apartment there or what?
Oh yeah. It's kind of unfortunate. Like the kitchen that we have like attached to our staff house is like pretty bleak. Like it's kind of just got like 2 hot plates and a microwave. So like cooking ability is not great on it. So I'm like, if you got some good one pot recipes or anything you can show me, that'd be great, because I'm really getting tired of chili. I've been making that every week here. So
I'm not the guy to ask. I freaking make like microwaved garlic sausage with melted cheese on it half the nights. I just make sure I eat. Yeah, well, I just make sure I eat a healthy lunch every day, and then I can kind of go off the rails at night.
There you go.
That's the plan anyway. It's worked so far. Fuck.
Yeah.
Oh man. So just kind of jump right into it. I'm sure we'll get into other stuff too, but one of the things that just to bring the listeners up to speed was I was kicking around the idea one day, or actually for a while, of doing a solo podcast about meditation and just taking people through how I got into meditating, actually how I meditate, and then just on a whim, one of the days that I was really thinking about it, you had texted me and asked me a question about meditating. And then I was like, oh yeah, I know for sure. I'll give you a call later and I'll give you the full rundown, because I was excited to walk somebody through it so that I could learn a little bit better. And I always do better talking to someone. And then I meditated that day and I come out of it and I thought, well, why don't me and Kyle just hop on the pod again, talk about it, and go through it, and then it'd be a record for everybody else. So fuck, I texted you up, and you seemed hot and ready for the idea, and then life just got crazy, and we weren't able to do it, so we kind of let it sit for a bit, and it was almost time to do another podcast on our own. So I figured we'd just kind of do both, to kind of go through the meditation and just catch up and see where the conversation goes out of that. How's that sound?
Oh, it sounds great to me.
So since then, you kind of told me that you had started meditating on your own. How's that been for you?
Yeah, so I think I've been into it now for maybe about a month. Because
Yeah,
I kind of figured, if we were gonna hop on the pod, like it'd be nice for me to have, a little bit of experience with it to kind of elaborate
yeah,
on like my journey into it to hopefully
hmm
share that with others. So hopefully they can maybe get into it, or you just, bring the idea to fruition and then like kind of
yeah,
normalize it a little bit more. I think it was kind of for me, it was almost like a little bit of a if you hear of someone meditating, there's kind of a stigma around it. It's like, oh, like that's
yeah,
kind of weird Buddhist shit. But it's actually
yeah,
like I think the benefits of it are phenomenal, and something like if we look at our bodies, like they stress every day you should go to the gym or get some exercise, right, and always have your body working, but they never really talk about like maintenance of your mind.
hmm
So, and that's like such a big part of our lives right now. So yeah, for me, I kind of got into it like. I kept hearing about, meditation. I was always kind of like curious about it, but never really like dug into it too much. And I think I was actually,
hmm
it might have even been Chicklets. They had a guy on and they were talking about how he was reading a book about, they kind of analyzed the most kind of elite people in their field. So they were talking to like the top doctors, the top researchers, like pro
hmm
athletes, like F1 drivers, top businessmen, those
yeah,
kind of people. And he was trying to find out like, okay, well, what makes these people tick? Like, are they,
hmm
taking
what's the
something that we don't know
commonalities?
about,
Yeah,
or are they just kind of born differently and wired differently, or like what's kind of like the common theme to obviously to try and understand how you can kind of get to that level. And
yeah,
basically he was saying was like it was over three-quarters of those people actually meditated.
yeah.
So that was kind of like an eye-opening thing for him. So he was, an NHL hockey player. I think it was Alex Killorn was maybe on the interview, or
Okay,
it
yeah.
was someone from Tampa Bay. I can't remember exactly the episode, but
hmm
he was talking about how that's how he got into it, and just his journey with it. So I kind of,
hmm
that kind of sparked me to finally, okay, like, how am I going to get into this? So yeah, I just kind of did some Googling. I found an app that was very helpful. Actually, it was called, I think Headspace it was called.
Yeah, yeah. There's Headspace is a good one. Calm is a good one. Waking Up by Sam Harris is another one I've heard lots of good things about. I've never actually used any of the apps, but I know tons of people that have, and I think that's a great resource to get people into it. Right? I think that's probably the easiest way if you want to cut and dry one is just to download one of those and hop in. And then another thing that is I think part of those apps, like I said, I've never used one, but is also there's these things called binaural beats, and it's like sounds and music that goes along with certain states and helps you put you in certain states with your mind. So there's ones for meditation, there's ones for sleep, there's ones for all sorts of things, and they're just on SoundCloud and stuff, and YouTube and Spotify. You can kind of throw those on. I've only done it a couple times with meditating, but it is quite nice. It's kind of your typical what you'd think, very Buddhist sounding, rainforesty. Calming noises, and I found it actually helped a little bit the one or two times I've tried it. Just usually I can get it now after doing it for a couple months now, I can kind of get into that spot regardless of where I am, and I don't get as distracted. Like when I first started, I used to have perfect peace and quiet. If someone was walking around outside the room, I'd get distracted and I'd be hearing the footsteps. But now I can kind of get into it. But I found that that's also a really helpful place if you're somewhere loud and you just need to throw the headphones in, throw that kind of binaural beats for meditation on, and you're kind of off into the zone. But so then what type of meditation did you kind of go into? Do you have a mantra, or like just take me through if you were when you first sat down to meditate, and maybe how you sit down to meditate now? If you sit down, you don't really have to sit down to meditate, but take me through how you do it.
Yeah, so I think for me it kind of started, like I've kind of been into yoga for the last 2 years or so, maybe. Like I
Yeah.
was kind of looking at my flexibility one day and I was like, oh my God, like I can't, I'm like 6 inches from touching my toes. Like I got to
Yeah,
do something
I'm right
about
there
this,
with
you
you.
know. And for
Yeah.
someone who was like, playing sports all their lives, like,
hmm
stretching at the end of practice, like that was always kind of, hit some down dog and get
Yeah.
out of there, right? So finally I was like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I better do something about this. And like, I don't love yoga, it's not my forte, but I just know like the benefits of it are are like so great, right? So yeah, I kind of got into yoga about 2 years ago, and that was, almost like looking now at like what the shavasana at the end of the practice was, is kind of like how I moved into meditation. So in
Yeah.
a sense, I was almost like kind of already meditating with that, because yeah, it's kind of got that,
For sure.
you know, I don't know what you call that music, but that's always on in the background when you're hitting your
Yeah.
shavasana, and like you can kind of, you know, clear your mind and just get to a
Yeah.
kind of a state of clarity there. So I think I was already on some extent kind of doing meditation,
For
without
sure.
actually, sitting down to say I'm going to meditate. So I think it's kind of just been an extension of that. And like, it's kind of given me a little bit more like with Headspace, there's kind of a guide talking you through like, you know, not what you should be feeling, but just kind of like guiding you around like what your thoughts might be going, and how, you know, they're kind of floating in and out, and these sort of things, and,
Yeah.
and what you can do to kind of, acknowledge them and bring some self-awareness to you. So I found that one was a little bit, it was kind of a nice kind of next level for me to kind of bring me to, some step by steps, and what I should
Yeah.
be kind of thinking about, and bringing some a little bit more like some purpose to it. And I've actually
Yeah.
found that's been really good now. So like when I'll do yoga, if I hit a shavasana at the end of a yoga session, then I'll just kind of go straight into meditation from there. So I don't really know exactly, like, to answer your question, like what type of meditation I'm doing. Like I'm
Yeah.
just kind of doing, I don't know, the most generic one. Like it's not really aimed
Yeah.
at much, but yeah, just bringing some self awareness and some mindfulness to your thoughts. So
No, that sounds perfect. And it's funny to hear you say that. I'd never really thought about it, but definitely I've been there too, because like I've only gone to yoga a couple times. It's usually when my girlfriend brings me there, and it's usually the hot yoga. So after that, you do that for an hour. You're just totally soaked, and you lay there, and it is that mental clarity that you never feel before, and it did feel amazing. And I never even put that together. I didn't even equate that when I did start to meditate. But you're so right, that is like the exact same feeling. And that's the funny part about when people do get into meditation, start to feel what that emptiness and that clarity feels like. They'll have found it before in other areas of life, right? Like it might be yoga, it might be just laying down after a good hard workout. There can be a million things. Like everybody has something different. Could be going for a walk. Somebody, usually in people's life, you'll have something that can kind of bring you to that spot. It's just about making it more practicable and training yourself to get into that place easier and more effectively, so that you can actually make it a skill, instead of just accidentally falling into it every now and again when you are doing something like after a yoga session, right? So maybe I'll just take people through, kind of my journey with it, and then I'll let you ask questions along the way, because I feel like that's part of the reason I wanted to have you on to do this too, is just because I figured I wouldn't do as good of a job explaining my own journey with it by myself, because I feel like I always work better with someone to kind of bounce things off of and stuff. So I was very similar to you, Kyle. I'd heard that from so many people, and it was lots of times on podcasts. On these podcasts, I'd listen to all these really high level people were always talking about meditation, and they kept talking about this transcendental meditation, TM, and I kept hearing that everywhere. This TM. Oh, you got to do TM. I couldn't get through my day without TM. So I thought, well, what is this TM? But I never really dove into it. It was like, oh yeah, that's something on the list. I'll get to it eventually. Kind of like yoga and kind of like stretching, all those things that I just put off, but know would be good for me. But then I got to a point where during COVID, it was probably maybe a month into COVID, right at the start when everything was really locked down. You weren't seeing anybody else, and work was really crazy and hectic. And I was living by myself, wasn't seeing anybody, and I got quite to a dark place. I was pretty down. I was feeling pretty depressed, and I'd never felt that way before. And I was really scared and really worried about it. And ended up going back to Slade to see my parents, and kind of broke down to them, told them how I was feeling, got a bit off my chest, but even still, I didn't feel great. And then the next day, I just thought, well, let's try this TM thing. So I YouTubed a couple videos, and from what I saw, the only real directions I could find was just find a mantra. Well, they said to go to somebody and they'll give you a mantra, and you can never tell anybody what your mantra is, which I don't know. I don't know the real reasoning behind it, because I never looked into it further of why you wouldn't tell somebody your mantra, or why it's a secret, but apparently it's a secret. I don't know. I just came up with my own, and I've probably changed it about 10 times since then. It's just about having something to go back to. And then they said, just sit there and repeat that mantra over and over for whatever time you set. So I said 20 minutes. I got my mantra in my head, and I just did that in and out 20 minutes just saying it over and over again. And I got to the end and my alarm went off and it kind of scared me. I was just in a complete trance at that point of just not even knowing what was going on. And it was a really cool feeling. And then after that, when I tried it again, it was not as good. It wasn't the second time I tried to get into it, do the exact same thing. My mind wouldn't stop racing. I couldn't get it to shut off. And I thought, like, what the hell is with this? And I think, like you said, there is a lot of stigma about it. And I think there's a lot of expectations with meditation. There's expectations around what it should feel like while you're doing it, what you should get out of it, how easy it should be, what you're trying to accomplish. And I think that overcomplicates it. I think that was what was really having me struggle with that. I was looking for some nirvana or weird thing that I was going to get to, but most of it is just about sitting there. And when your brain starts to trail off and lose focus and start thinking weird thoughts and going into something, it's just about catching yourself and bringing yourself back to your breath or back to your mantra or back to whatever it is, to your center, and then flexing that muscle as much as you can, right? Just staying in it, trying to hold it without losing it, but you're inevitably going to lose it. The mind likes to wander. We're not used to sitting with stillness very much at all. So it's going to happen. But every time you bring yourself back to that center, you're training that muscle to calm yourself and empty your mind. And I found that it started once I got a couple weeks into it, I could start to do it at night when I was trying to sleep. Because before I used to always really struggle with my mind racing at night. I couldn't fall asleep.
Definitely.
And just to sit there and have a tool now to empty your mind, it was very effective. And then, So I used a mantra for a while. Then I had heard another guy just on a podcast one day. I was listening, and they said that their teacher had taught them just to instead of a mantra, just concentrate on the feeling. And I just want to go over just a couple different ways because I've tried all these ways and they've all worked great. So I just want to put them all out there for different ways for people to try.
So can you kind of elaborate a little bit more on like what a mantra is? Just so like, I don't know, for even me, I don't really know what you're saying with that. So for the viewers too.
A mantra could be anything. It could be a set of words. It could be like something like in with the good, out with the bad, or like the classic Om, right? Like that's a mantra too, right? And just saying that, okay. and a lot of the traditional mantras are centered around a certain length to extend the breath and to get into a rhythmic breathing pattern with it. I think that's kind of advanced, and I was going to get to that, but it can be anything, right? It could be gibberish, it could be counting, it could be anything that you just do over and over again with repetition that you can kind of let go. And something that really helped me at the start, because I found that I was concentrating too much on my mantra, and instead of emptying my mind, I was just hyper focusing on it. So one thing that I tried to do was get into the rhythm of it, and then try and say it in my mind quieter. So I was just barely whispering in my mind my mantra with the ins and the outs of my breaths. And I'm not quite sure if the mantra has to match your breath because I never really researched it, but I found when I'd find one where I had like say one word for the in and one word for the out, or like a in with the good, out with the bad, right? And you kind of just get into a rhythm of it. And I think what it is, the way I thought about it at first was it was like training wheels for meditation. I found that.
Okay.
But I think I was wrong on this. I've kind of flip-flopped on this before, because for a while I started with the mantra, and then I'd heard this podcast and the guy was talking about just concentrate on the feeling, going past, just breathe through your nose and just concentrate on the feeling of the little hairs going in and out, and just concentrate on the feeling of the breath instead of a mantra. And I found, this is really good, and it would get me even deeper because now I'm not even saying anything. I'm keeping my mind completely blank, and I was thinking, I bet you this in my head I thought, this TM with that mantra is probably just trying to get you to do it, but it's probably like training wheels. Like once you're really good at it, you shouldn't need that. But then just recently, I found that I was not getting what I really wanted out of the meditation. I went back to using a mantra again. And I found some really good success with it. And I was listening to, who was saying it? I think it might have been Sam Harris, or it might have been Pete Holmes that was talking about how the mantra is important because it's giving your mind a signal to go into that meditative state. And it's almost like a trigger. Right. And you get better and better in recognizing it. And that's why it's important to keep the same mantra and really invest in it, because your body eventually, sometimes you're going to do good, sometimes you're going to be bad, right? Sometimes you'll sit down, you'll be right into it, and you'll have a great meditation. Sometimes you'll be fighting it the whole time. You'll feel like you barely got anything out of it. That's just part of the gig. You're going to be in different mind states when you go into it. But I found that, that is kind of a cool idea. It's not just the training wheels. It's actually a part of the experience. So now what I do is, and then another third way I've tried that I also really like is, instead of a mantra and instead of just concentrating on my breath like that, is to take 5 or 6 second breaths in and 5 or 6 second breaths out, and just count it in. So a big, slow, long, deep breath in for 5 or 6 seconds, then a long, slow, deep breath out for 5 or 6 seconds. And then I've been experimenting lately, and I found that one, like the really deep breaths ones, I'll do that like before. I did that before this podcast because I was thinking about what I wanted to talk to you with, or talk about with you, Kyle, and things like that. Or if I was before I was going into a big meeting for work and I really had to concentrate on it, because I find that one with the really deep breaths, it almost energizes the mind a little bit. And I know it sounds silly to think of like stillness and emptying the mind and powering it up, but for some reason I find that when I get into a really good meditative state, um, I come up with the best ideas, and things that have been
Right.
bugging me that I can't work through just kind of pop in. But I found that more with different types of meditation. Like I found that with the deep breathing ones. So sometimes during the day, if I've had a hard day at work and I'm, halfway through the day and I need a reset, lots of times that's where I'll do, instead of the deep breaths, I'll just do the mantra very deep inside, very just shutting off, and just try and rest and just complete stillness with those ones and not think about anything, always just trying to bring it back. And that is a very revitalizational. I don't know if that's even a word, but it feels really good. And I feel like I can get a lot more out of my day after those ones. So I'll do those ones. But if it's something, say, before a podcast where I want to focus in, sometimes I'll do those deep breathing ones, get into the zone. And then another piece that I found was midway through, when I was just starting to get the meditation down a little bit and find that I was getting things out of it, I would struggle because I'd be trying to meditate and trying to keep my mind empty, but a really good idea would come. And you'd be kind of sitting there thinking like, oh, I don't want to lose it. I don't want to go down this track because I'm trying to keep my mind empty, but I don't want to forget about this idea. Like, oh, that's a really good idea for work. Like that is something I need to do, or for the podcast, or that's a great guest idea. So you kind of need to find that balance. And I found as I got better at it, I would be able to just let an idea fluctuate enough to where I could remember it and I wouldn't forget it when I left, or just walk it through a little bit and then get back to that stillness. And I found that was something that I really struggled with, but it comes back to that not having expectations. I feel like what hurts people is they think like, oh, either I have to just be still the whole time, I can't be thinking about anything, and that stops them from getting those good ideas out of it and things like that. And if you are so concentrating on the good ideas part and being stillness to figure things out and kind of meditate on something, you're not going to ever get to that full place of relaxation and stillness to actually get the benefits of it, right? So it's kind of that catch-22 where just people's expectations going into it. And then I think also too, another expectation that stops people from following through with it is that it is a skill and it's something that you need to get better at. And I think that was something when I first started looking into it, everyone just said, you got to give it 2 weeks to a month, because if you try and go in at right away, you might not have a very good experience in your first couple and you might have to work at it, but eventually you will get better at it. So maybe that's something I'm curious with you over the month of doing it a little bit more, or at least a little bit more purposefully. Have you noticed that you've gotten any better or worse at it?
Honestly, I would say I haven't really noticed a trend. Like I think it
Yeah,
was actually pretty successful for me off the bat, but I think one of the
that's awesome.
reasons was like I didn't have expectations going in. Like when I was doing
Mm-hmm.
kind of
Mm-hmm.
looking at like the purposes of it, I was like, oh, these all look pretty beneficial, but like I didn't really have like a certain goal in mind to achieve it. So I think I kind
Mm-hmm.
of allowed that like openness from the get-go to kind
Yeah,
of get into that state, and I didn't have these expectations of what I was going to get out of it. So I just kind of
for sure.
got jumped right in and kind of, you know, relaxed right away, and that way I think that's why I got off to like such a good start with it. But
Yeah.
I definitely can like agree with you in the fact saying like, so I think people do go in with like too different or too high of expectations with it, and then
Yeah.
like one thing I kind of heard that's a good comparison is like it's kind of like sleep. Like the harder you try at it, the worse you are at it.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
like if you go to sleep and you're like pumped to get a good sleep and you're just like, oh yeah, get to sleep, get to sleep. Like you're never gonna sleep, right? So
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
same sort of thing, right? And then yeah, to kind of touch on what you're talking about with like having really great thoughts about it too is like I think one of my sessions I was, you know, the guide or whatever was talking about how it's almost like you kind of have a sky, and the clouds are your thoughts and they're kind of just
Mm-hmm.
going by. You're not really like focusing in on the clouds, and then you kind of want to get to that clear blue sky, but you allow the clouds to kind of float in and flow out, and you
Yeah.
acknowledge them. You don't try and like block them out, you know, you don't because I think that's a big part of it, is like not really, and it's hard to say, is like not really trying too hard, because as soon as
Hmm.
you kind of get to that, you kind of lose the benefits of it, I think. So,
Yeah, for
um,
sure.
but yeah, like basically, I think for me, yeah, over the month, actually, it's been a pretty steady journey. I think maybe there has been like quite a bit of improvements, but I just really haven't like reflected
See them
too hard on
directly.
it to
Yeah.
kind of think and realize those benefits. But
Hmm.
yeah, I think just the biggest thing for me was like I kind of just went in with like some open mindedness. And actually, you know what, like maybe the first like three or so, I did them and I was like, okay, well, I don't really feel much different, but
Hmm.
I just kind of felt relaxed. I was always doing them before bed, but I definitely like felt a better sleep and like a clear mind. And I think
Yeah.
me and you both, like touching back on what you were talking about, is like, when you got a crazy day at work, you got, this, that, and the other thing flying through your mind, and you're not really able, like both in the conscious and the subconscious, so you're not really able to like take some good ideas and put them into action, just because there's so much
Yeah.
going on. So when you have that reset through meditation, you're able to now like focus your energy on, just a couple of good ideas. And I think that's like something I'd like to, like I haven't been on a rig yet since I've started meditation, but I think like that's definitely something I'd like to, give a shot. Like if we've got a day where like, the formation's just giving us hell, like just, yeah, take
Yeah.
4 minutes and after you've tried some things and just take a little meditation and see what kind of ideas you can kind of come up with and just, and yeah, I'm really curious to see, like, cause I haven't really utilized it at work yet. So I'm excited to kind of try it in that setting. So,
Yeah, for sure. And then what's exciting too is you can try the different styles of meditation too once you get a little bit freer with the type, like kind of what I was saying, where I found different types of meditation where I could get different things out of it and kind of specialize for what I need out of that situation, right? Like if you just need a refresh, your brain's fried, you have too many things going through and you just need a reset, right? There's one thing to do there. If you really need to work through a specific problem, you want to kind of keep it half in your mind and let it go by. That's perfect for that, right? Or the deep breathing ones, right? Because I find when you concentrate for, if you do like, if you have 50 minutes per se, and that's the other piece of this too that I missed. There's a couple of points that you helped me remember, and that's why I'm so glad you're here, because you nailed a few really important pieces that I completely flew by. Is one, you don't need 20 minutes every time. You can do 3 minutes, you can do 5 minutes, you can do 10, you can do whatever you have. Once you
hmm
get into that style, and especially once you practice it a few times, you can get into it quicker. So that 5 minutes actually means something, and you get into those 5 minutes and you can really get a lot out of it. And everyone's going to get different things out of different amounts. I really like 20 minutes if I can afford it. There's some days where you just don't have 20 minutes. Sometimes, say, days you only have 10, some days you only have 5. So I
yeah,
do like that you're not conscripted to a set amount, but it is really nice to have that flexibility. And then one of the most important pieces that I really wanted to cover, and I was trying not to forget, and I ended up doing it, but you kind of picked it back up for me, was the analogy of watching the clouds go by and not trying to hold them, not trying to control them. That is one of the biggest pieces too, because I found that was where I had struggled with, and I had to really listen to some teachers about meditation to help me through this. Was I was so critical. I'd get into that good flow state. I would be really empty and stuff, and then I never realized it right away when you're going to thoughts. You just realize it kind of, 2 or 3 steps down this thought path. You got like, oh shit, I'm thinking of something, and I get mad at myself, and I'd really shut it down and try and reset, which is the complete wrong thing. You just need to be, oh, I just noticed that I'm thinking. I'm going to bring it back to stillness. Like no judgment, no harsh comments to yourself. Just settling back in and letting it flow in. If those thoughts accidentally flowed in, let them accidentally flow out, right? And not try to control them, not trying to force it. And I found that was something that really was a game changer for me, of understanding and not going in with that judgment. I think I'm always hard on myself. So that was something I just went into it. Just like if I messed up in hockey, I'd be hard on myself. Like, come on, you idiot, like get better at this. That's what I was doing with
yeah,
meditation, but that's just not the right fit. And very luckily, the first time I did it, I didn't have a lot of that. I was able just to stay kind of on that mantra the whole time. So I didn't really need to use that much. But then a couple times later on, I really needed to make sure I was going into it with the right mindset and making sure I wasn't being too hard on myself with that, because you're trying to stay as close to that flow as possible. As soon as you get angry or really try and hold on or reset yourself, you're just bringing yourself back to baseline, and you're even farther away from that zone where maybe you were in a really deep meditative state and you just had a little thought trickle in. And if you would have just not tried to force it out, just tried to concentrate on your breathing, concentrate on your mantra, or concentrate on whatever you're concentrating, maybe your counting of your breaths, it will automatically bring you out of it. And you don't need to go into it. And I think just not having any judgment on yourself, and it goes back to expectations of, it doesn't matter what you're getting out of this, doesn't matter if it's a perfect meditation, you're just doing this for you and doing it to enjoy it and doing it to get whatever benefits you want out of it. So that's another really important part of it. But yeah, no, I think that's just a really cool journey. And I hope I covered all the different ways that I've meditated so far and what I've seen out of it, because I want to give people some options just to try it. And I think that's a great idea, is to try one of those apps. I mean, there's so many good ones out there. You're almost better off just to try one, see if it works. You can always go on your own if you want to, or if you're like me and you're just, I don't know, a lone wolf and you want to just figure it out on your own, you can do that too. It's up to anybody. But I just think it's such a powerful tool. And one of the reasons I think so, Kyle, is just, we used to, before we had cell phones, there was a lot of downtime. There was a lot of sitting around campfires. There was a lot of sitting with your own thoughts and being quiet and being meditative, right? Just sitting under the stars. And I feel like that was such a huge part of human development for so many years. And it's funny to look at the research on meditation and watch like the brain scans and what it does and the actual physiological effects it can have for giving yourself a good solid reset like that. And it makes so much sense once you think about it, that yeah, like we're probably meditating a good part of our day, like just doing something, or just walking vast distances while nobody's talking, right? Those are meditative things. You get into a rhythm, you get into those, and we've completely filled that up, right? You're waiting at the bank. What do? Pull out your phone, right? You're scrolling,
Yeah,
you're on the
exactly.
Instagram, right? You got time at a stoplight, you're in a drive-through, you're always feeding yourself with one thing. And I was the worst for this. Because once I found podcasts however many years ago, there was not a free second of my time I was not throwing a podcast on, right? If I was
Yeah.
walking from the truck to the gym, if that was as soon as I got in the gym, I started running, it was a podcast, right? Take the headphones out, shower for quick, headphone back in while I dress, and I got a podcast going. I never let myself sit still and let things, decompress and expand and kind of sit, right? And I think that was something that I was really doing harm to myself. And then when I started meditating, I started to see the benefits. Now, it's not always meditation. Sometimes it's breath work. Sometimes it's sitting and just doing some stretching, just anything to kind of not, just something to hop off that treadmill that you can get on with, just of perpetual motion moving forward, that you always have to be doing something. I almost felt stressed if I wasn't doing something right. I need to be moving forward at all times. And I think there's a lot of benefit to it and a lot of harm caused by not doing it. And I think meditation is just one of those easy triggers to pull that's going to immediately work to help alleviate that one stress, right? There's a million ways you can do it. It could be a walk, it could be knitting, it could be a million things that get you to that point. I just think meditation is so concentrated. It's just a concentrated version of that thing you can find anywhere, that I think it's just a good first step for anybody to take, and you can see some real benefits out of it. But you can find it doing anything, right?
Yeah, I definitely can see, and I don't know if it was kind of university that kind of shaped me into this, or if it was just,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of how I naturally am, is I'm super driven by, and I think you're kind of the same way, is efficiency and production. So if I
Mm-hmm.
have a day where I'm not productive, I just feel I feel so guilty after, right? So
Yeah, for
like
sure. Me
touching
too.
back to how you're always having your hands busy and stuff, right? If you know, for example, yeah, if I'm in line at the bank, I'm checking Facebook to see if I can make any sneaker deals or anything, right? I'm
Yeah, yeah.
checking my email, seeing if I can fit any in the meantime there, right? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I feel even when I'm planning my day, I'm kind of looking at my day in the morning, and I'm okay. Well, I'm doing this from this to this time. Then I got a half hour break for lunch, and then during lunch I
Mm-hmm.
can call my dad. So a two in one there, right? And
Yeah,
just
yeah. Oh,
I'm super just it's almost to the point where it's almost a little bit unhuman. I think it's almost
yeah,
robotic how much I
yeah.
feel if I'm not being efficient and productive. It
Mm-hmm.
really weighs heavy on me. So I totally agree that once you kind of can get something, and yeah, it doesn't have to be meditation, just something that can kind of draw you out of that and just kind of put you in a,
Mm-hmm.
in a state where you kind of shut off the rest of the world and get to just some time to be with your own thoughts and some
Yeah.
realizations. Then I think that's super beneficial, because I think especially right now, I think self-awareness is critical, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
something a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people maybe have a good grasp at. You're totally getting bombarded with people telling you how you should feel, how you should do things,
Mm-hmm.
not only from social media, but just from other people's expectations from you, from work's expectations
Society.
from you,
Yeah.
that, we're not really taking the time to sit back and realize, okay, well, how do I actually feel and why do I feel this way, right? Because if
Yeah.
you can kind of
Yeah.
get to that and at least understand the what am I feeling right now? It's so critical in
Mhm.
taking the next steps of like, okay, well, if I'm feeling this way and I don't like it, what do I have to do to get out of that? Or what are some options I can try here? Because yeah, I just think we're, you know, as a society, we're maybe not the best at that. Yeah, we're totally getting told like how we feel, what we
Mhm.
feel, oh, like you have all these expectations and these false sense of, especially I think Instagram's like the worst for it. Like you're only seeing
Yeah.
people's highs up there, right? And you're
Mhm.
like, oh well,
Mhm.
why aren't I doing something like that, right? So,
Yeah.
if you can take that minute to kind of escape that realm, I think the benefits are really like unlimited from that.
Mhm. And I really agree with that, Kyle, especially about the awareness part, because I think that's another big piece of it too. Is you're so right. There's narratives all the time, kind of muddling the waters and not really allowing you to be open to what your own inner truth is almost. And I find that a lot of times while you're meditating, things that you know but you're just kind of denying or lying to yourself about will come up. And just in those moments, it's almost like you always have these force fields up, these barriers up all the time that just help you navigate life and help make things easier. But when you get into that kind of center state where you're not sleeping, but you're not consciously trying to run that hamster wheel, it just brings everything down. It allows for you to realize these things or just for them to come up. I found so many things, and that's really helped out on my own deep work. I think sometimes there'll just be these really deep connections of like childhood traumas and things that you do and where things come from. Like, oh, I'm like that because of this. Like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And it's these things that obviously you must have known deep down for a long time. You've just never been in an area where you're receptive enough to hear it and to acknowledge it. And I find that that's one of the most interesting things too, is just about the awareness that it brings, and it almost gives you a different viewpoint on thoughts themselves and how they come in. Because I feel like we're so ruled by our thoughts. We think that thoughts are what runs everything, but there's something deeper than thoughts. Thoughts are just kind of a thing that can pop up and you can let them go. And you don't have to act on everything. If a thought comes up, it doesn't mean anything at all unless you attach meaning to it. And there's something deeper than that. And that's what you kind of start to feel when you do get into meditation. And I'm trying to explain this, but I've heard so many really experienced meditation teachers talk about this in such a more articulate way, and I'm just brutalizing it, but it's a really beautiful thing, and just even if you take it to the base dum dum version that I can give you, just that awareness that it'll give you, and the mindset shift just about your own thoughts and the importance on them, you almost get a better idea of who the true master of your own life is. And I think that it does help in a lot of really indirect ways. It does help bring you forward. And like I always say, I've mentioned on lots of podcasts, I know on days that I meditate, it gives me that extra split second when someone does something that would usually set me off and make me angry. It gives me that second of thought to think, well, maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe this is something that they were trained with. Maybe their parents inlaid this in them. Maybe this is completely out of their control. Whereas if I don't, a lot of times I'll think of that after, but I've already reacted in that moment. And I think it just helps you keep you um, in a more understanding state too, and a more, I guess that comes back to awareness as well, as just knowing who you are and knowing those around you and knowing the narratives that you're fighting. Everybody's fighting, right? Everyone's got their own stories, their own bullshit going on. You just have to be more
Yeah.
accepting of that. But when you can sit and be more accepting of that for yourself, it automatically makes you more accepting and to see that in others when you're just navigating day-to-day life.
Definitely, yeah. Yeah, I think one thing I actually kind of was when I was originally kind of researching, like, oh, what's some of the
Mm-hmm.
benefits of meditation, was one of them was talking about, yeah, how it can bring you to a lot better state in terms of like how you're a little bit less reactive to
Mm-hmm.
unideal situations that come up. When I kind of read that, I was like, well, how's it going to affect that, right? Like, I didn't really see how the chains kind of connected those 2 points, but I actually
Mm-hmm.
did notice, like, at work, like it's for me, like, I try and not be such a reactive person, but of course it's hard to be in
It's
all
tough.
situations,
Mm-hmm.
and usually it's kind of when you're not thinking about it, because yeah, it's in stressful times where you got so much going through your mind. But yeah, I found for me, like, it just, yeah, it kind of brought me to a better sense of, yeah, like, kind of understanding like why I'm having thoughts, and it gives you that chance to kind of reflect on those thoughts, and kind of get to a better sense of understanding for yourself. So
Mhm.
totally kind of in agree, like looking back at that statement saying like what some of the benefits of meditation and not really understanding it and getting to where I am now with that understanding. I think that's been a bit of a cool journey for me. So
Yeah, no, and it is it's cool to be able to watch that journey in yourself and to just notice those little things, even if it's not anything life changing. Just those little tweaks that you notice, just oh, it helps you stay on that path of trying to work towards it, whether it's meditation or anything else that you're trying to better yourself with. It's just nice to see those little goalposts that you can see visually or emotionally. Just to let you know you're doing the right thing and you're on the right path. Those are always nice to keep you coming back to whatever practice it is. So I'm sure we'll get into more meditation stuff and I'll have more ideas and we'll jump back to it. That's kind of what I wanted to get it out of the way right at the start. But another thing that I wanted to ask you, just I was curious if it was going to come up because before we started this, I just thought, well, before I hop up, I didn't know you before Lister, so I just took a scroll back through Instagram, way back to the first couple of pictures, and I think one of the first pictures on Instagram was a nice pair of shoes. And you just mentioned waiting in line at the bank and seeing if you get a good deal on shoes. And I thought that was a newer obsession, but you've been after shoes for a long time because I saw them right from the start. So how did you get into shoes like that? How much do you know about shoes and just the whole shoe culture? I know so many people that are so far into it, and I'm just very casual with my appreciation of what they are. But it seems like you're pretty far into the rabbit hole.
yeah, definitely. So for me, I think like shoes have always been, I don't know, when I was a kid, like, and it was that, before school, mom's like, yeah, we're gonna go shoe shopping, get your pair for the year.
Yeah,
Like that was always like my favorite, right? I don't know why.
yeah,
Like I never really like clothes that much, but shoes just they hit different for me, right? Even
mm-hmm,
from a young
mm-hmm.
age. So I think I was probably about maybe 12 or 13. And I had a buddy who lived kind of near downtown. So when I'd go over and hang out at his house, we'd always walk down to 17th Ave, and they had a couple different like kind of sneaker shops around there. We'd go
Yeah,
hang out and just he was the same way, like just love shoes, right? So we'd go look at them and stuff, and kind of just kind of be in awe of all these different sneakers. And they were like at that time too, like you didn't have a ton of money. I think
yeah,
that was even before I started like refing hockey. So I didn't really have like a source of income. So, a $200 pair of shoes, you're like, oh, like
yeah.
there's no way I could afford these, right?
I'll never have those. Yeah,
Yeah. So that's kind of how it started. And then like just from there, like it kind of sparked some more interest. Like the shoe that kind of hit it off for me was like these ones called Nike SB Dunks. So they're kind of a
mm-hmm.
skateboarding shoe, but every shoe has like a different kind of inspiration behind it, and they have these different designers. So um, yeah, like for example, like two that I have that are like pretty valuable now is I think they released in I think 2008 or something, 2009. So
Yeah,
one of them that is they're called like the red lobsters, for example. So they literally come and they've got like the elastic bands around the toe of the shoe, right? And if
yeah,
you were lucky enough to be at the skate shop that like dropped them, you could actually get like a special edition box that was like a crate. So these shoes would come in a crate just like lobsters, right? And then what like
yeah,
made it really cool for me was farther from that, like I guess there's a mutation in lobsters that like one in 100,000 are blue. So they made a
yeah,
really limited edition one that was like the exact same but in the color blue, right? So just to kind of give you an idea of like, what kind of sparked the interest for me was just like these
yeah,
crazy inspirations, right? So then like kind of me and my buddy's hobby was just like back then it was really hard to find shoes. Like there was no
yeah.
StockX or Grailed, or like ordering online was still kind of coming up. So like,
Right.
every weekend it was like we were hitting Kijiji and stuff and like trying to find like, oh, can we find any
Mm-hmm.
for like $40 or something, and just having some
Yeah,
rare
looking
come
for
ups,
some deals.
almost like thrift shopping, but I found like thrift shops always had junk shoes, so we didn't really like go
Yeah,
to thrift shops. Um so yeah, like it just kind of grew from there. And then once I got to like I started kind of building a collection. Mom hated it. Like she absolutely hated it. She's like, you can't believe you're spending money on this, right? So
yeah,
um yeah, eventually, like I think by the end of high school, I was probably at about like 20 pairs or so.
yeah,
And then the other thing I was kind of doing too was like it was like if I was going on a trip, I'd kind of like to buy a pair of shoes. So I went to England in grade 11, and I went to France in grade 10. So both of those trips, like I bought a pair of shoes when I was on those trips, and then
yeah,
that pair of shoes now is kind of like a reminder or keepsake of that trip, right?
for sure,
Um, But so yeah, then once I went to high school, I kind of eased out just because like it is a super expensive hobby.
for
Um,
sure.
so yeah, once I got into university, I chilled out. I didn't really buy many. I kind of followed it a little bit, but it definitely kind of fell off my plate a little bit just because, you're
Mhm.
busy with other things, Um, and then kind of, yeah, like after I graduated, I was like, oh, I should maybe, get back into it now. I got a steady income. Like there's a lot of interesting things being done with shoes, like
Mhm.
with all the different designers and stuff, right? And now, like just with the online presence, you can kind of do it from anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I kind of got back into it after graduation and kind of yeah started buying shoes again. And oh, mom hates it especially now because like I'm over here buying shoes and they'll ship to my house in Calgary, and my mom will just like put
Yeah.
them in the basement, right? So and there's kind of two kind of like main outlets of sneakers, and that's like the hardcore sneaker culture. That's the people that just like love the sneakers. But now
Mhm.
we've seen like a huge rise of like reselling culture, which is like
Yeah.
it's absurd how much like profits are to be made with like buying and selling sneakers. I know
Yeah.
there's like one guy in the States last year and he's 19 and he cleared 1.8 million. Like that's how much he made buying and selling sneakers. Like imagine being 19, and moving
Holy
that kind
shit.
of stock, right? And it's gotten
Holy.
so far to the point where now you can even like buy these things called bots, which are like kind of like an online software program that like
Mhm.
you input your credit card info and everything into it, and it'll like automatically check out on certain websites. Um, so, and then it's gotten to the point now where you can even resell bots. So bots will only sell a certain amount of licenses, and then if you buy that license, sometimes you can flip the license for like an even bigger profit. So it's like it's
Jesus.
super far down with like how many levels there are to this like reselling game. And some people say
Mhm.
it's like super shitty because it's like not the people who actually want the shoes that get the shoes. Some people
Yeah,
say it's
they're just
good because
paying
it's
extra
brought
money
this
for
whole
it.
new access of where you can find them and buy them. Like the
Mhm.
biggest game changer now, I think, is this company called StockX. So they're basically like a middleman for sneaker transactions. So you can either like post your sneakers on sale for this website, and if a buyer buys them, you ship them to StockX. StockX will like verify them because definitely fakes are a big problem, right?
Yeah.
And non-authentic ones. So, and then if it passes, they'll send it then to the buyer, right? So they've essentially made like
Yeah.
a market for buying and selling sneakers, and there's even like the bid and ask price on them too. There's like the
Mhm.
12-month charts, the volatility measures and stuff. So they're literally making it like an investment program platform essentially,
Yeah.
right? So that's kind of how it started for me. And like I like to think I'm kind of in between the two. Like I definitely will buy and sell sneakers that I know I can make a good profit on, kind of just as a
Yeah.
side hustle. But there's a lot out there that I'm like just trying to get for me. And the problem I find now too is like, well, if I'm trying to buy a sneaker I really want and it's $1,000, for example, like that's pretty hard to justify, right? But
Yeah.
if I can buy a $300 sneaker, sell it for $400, buy two $200 sneakers, sell those for $600, and kind of like work into it, then
Yeah.
then I can kind of justify
You
it
can
in
make it
my head,
work. You can
right?
make it
So
work. What's
so
the
that's kind of how
what's your
I do
favorite
it.
pair of shoes you own now?
Oh, favorite pair, like those. So I do actually have those red and those blue lobsters, and those are
Oh,
definitely like the grails in my collection. Like if you look at those new, like it's actually absurd now how much they're selling for. Like I think it's around like if you have like a pair of unworn in the box, like I think they're about like 3 or 4 thousand bucks.
big
Yeah, so
money.
they're pricey
Holy
because that's the
shit.
thing too is like so the kind of like the two main sneakers you can buy are Jordans like or like
Yeah.
LeBrons or Kobe's or something. So those ones though like sometimes they'll make a model and then they'll remake it again in like 5 years if it was a really successful colorway. But with these
Yeah.
Nike SBs is like once they come out and they drop and they sell out, they don't make more of them, right? So the ones
Oh,
from 2000 whatever, they won't make again, right?
right.
Yeah, so I think
I
like those
got you.
lobsters are definitely like kind of my grails.
Yeah.
Other than
Would you
that,
say
yeah,
are
like it's
those?
kind of hard to pick like one favorite pair. Like
Yeah,
man,
it's
like
like
to be
picking
honest,
kids
the collection's
probably.
pretty big now. It's like at about 170 pairs. So
170 pairs, Kyle? Holy
yeah,
fuck. Oh, I didn't know you had that many. I was thinking you were about to say 30 or 40. Holy shit.
no,
Hey,
no,
that's
yeah,
awesome.
it's
You love it. That's awesome.
yeah, so it's definitely an expensive hobby. Like, so it's been good living in Saudi because like, there's no tax over here for me. So like I'm making
Right.
decent coin and then I'm not paying for rent. Like really my only expenses are like my food when I'm not at the rig and my cell phone. So
Mhm.
like I've got a little bit of extra income to kind of throw around, and and then it's
Yeah.
kind of nice, like when I come back on breaks, like when I was back in the summer, like there's actually a couple stores now in Calgary that will like buy. They're kind of essentially doing reselling, but in a shop. Like I think it's
Mhm.
called in Chinook Mall. It's called like Plus. So the owner of
Yeah.
there came to my house, like looked through my sneakers and was like, I think he picked out like 16 pairs. Was like, yeah, I'll give you like 6K for these.
Oh,
So it's like, okay,
I
well, it's
fucking like
paid for
it.
my summer, right? So,
Yeah,
um, not to flex too hard there. Like it definitely takes work too, though, right? Like you got to
for
be on
sure.
top of when the drops are coming out. So it's not like
Yeah.
it's not profit for nothing either, right? And the thing
No,
is, like,
and all the
what I think,
knowledge too.
yeah, and just understanding like where the sneakers are coming out, what time, what works best for
Hmm.
checking out quickly, because that's the name of the game. A lot of the time is just whoever can check out fastest, right? So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's been a pretty interesting journey, but like yeah, like it's in Calgary, we don't have the biggest scene, but I mean, if you go to places like LA or New York, like sneaker culture
Hmm.
is very big there.
Yeah. I was listening to a podcast, Below the Belt with Brendan Schaub, and he's a huge sneakerhead. He's an ex UFC fighter. Now he's doing comedy, and he's got a pretty successful podcast, but he's huge into sneakers. And he, I don't know what he was doing. I think maybe he was taping a special, so he got a custom pair of shoes from that. I've sent you a couple posts from this guy, the shoe surgeon on
Yeah, yeah.
Instagram, and he makes the fucking coolest shoes. And like, I was never even into shoes really. Like, I like shoes and I like fashion a little bit, but never got too far into it. But just the creations he would make, like the custom Jordans and like these patterns and like the snake skin and all that stuff. I just fell in love with them, and I wanted a pair of Jordans so fucking bad, but I had no idea where to buy. Like you say, like I would never see them at stores. I'd never like. I just wanted a pair of red fucking Jordan ones, and like that's all I wanted. And fuck, I could not find one forever. So fucking that one time that you had a pair just handy, right size, and was able to snag them for me. Now they're my favorite pair of shoes. I just treat them like gold. Don't ever want to wear them out if it's any sort of rain. I just keep them crisp. Those are my favorite shoes now.
Yeah, yeah, and I definitely like try and if my friends are like messaging me like, hey, I want to like you, like, oh, I just want a nice pair of red and black Jordans. Like, where do I look? What can I do? Like, I
Yeah,
definitely love like helping out my friends if they're looking for like a
yeah.
certain pair of shoes. Like, actually, right now, maybe I won't name drop him because it'd be pretty big flex, but I'm trying to be like a middleman for a deal for, Air Jordan did a collaboration with like Dwar or Christian Dwar, like that pretty high end
Oh yeah,
fashion
yeah,
brand.
yeah.
So they came out with like a high and a low top shoe, and they sold for about 3 grand new, and now they're reselling for about like 7 grand.
Whoa.
So yeah, I'm trying to kind of middleman a deal with these guys, and there's actually like kind of big money in middlemaning. Like I know for certain like super rare sneakers, like you can actually get like they call it finder's fee. So if you're able to like find
Yeah.
if you know the buyer and you can find a seller for them, he'll give you like
Mhm.
5 or 10% commission too. But I
That's
definitely
pretty
think Calgary is
awesome.
probably not the best place to be if you're trying to do that. Like you'd probably want to be in
Yeah.
the New Yorks or Torontos or something if that's what you're going to pursue. But
But if you can do it a little bit on the side, nothing wrong with that. Fuck, make a
exactly, especially with the
couple
power of the
percentage
internet
points.
now, right?
For sure, for sure. Oh man, yeah, because that was the thing when Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse came out, they dropped like a Spider-Man set of Jordans, like a special release of them, and I thought they were so cool. I went to so many shoe stores just not knowing how shoes worked, apparently, I guess, and I just like,
Yeah,
okay, I know they release like what stores have them. I was asking around, just couldn't figure it out. I didn't realize that there was this whole culture surrounding it, and like you had to be there on the day, on the time of release, and hopefully get them. And if you don't, you're kind of boned, right? Like, so
yeah.
if you ever see a set of those in size 12, let me know. I might swing
Yeah, I
along
actually,
somewhere.
those ones sold out pretty quick. Like I think they're
I
reselling about
bet.
like $700 now or $800.
Well,
Yeah,
maybe if
and
I can
pretty
find
much
a
like
couple pairs to resell.
yeah, pretty much any Jordan 1 now and any like red and black Jordan is basically like a good investment just because I think the
Yeah.
Last Dance pumped it up pretty good.
Oh, for sure.
So it's kind of interesting. You kind of got to follow the trends too. And like what I usually do is like,
Mhm.
you know, I look at when a sneaker's coming out and I'm like, okay, there's some resale potential here. I kind of
Yeah.
look at like the sizing available because like you kind of got to find a
Right.
balance
Right.
between, okay, I'll try and get a size that's maybe a little bit more rare that sells higher, but I also don't want to try for a size that they only have like two pairs of stock in, right? So it's kind
Right.
of that's a whole different game you got to play too, right? And I think there's certain shoes that bigger sizes sell better, and there's certain shoes that smaller sell better. So, and I think
Really.
that
And you
honestly
have to know
comes
all
from
that.
Yeah, well, I mean, like you don't have to know all that, but if you want to,
But if you want to, yeah,
if you want to
right,
play the game right, you kind of do, right? So
yeah,
I know
yeah,
for Yeezys, for example, is like I've heard that they're like booming in China. Like everybody wants Yeezys, right? So with Yeezys,
yeah,
like I always try and go after the smaller sizes, like the 6, 7, 8s, because
uh-huh.
generally speaking, Chinese people have smaller feet, right? So those are then the high demand ones. But for example,
Right.
if you're looking at like a Jordan, usually it's like, American basketball players is the kind of the people that want that. So then you're kind of looking at, yeah, like the 11 and a half, the 12s that might sell the best too. So yeah, it's kind of a whole new element to the game that you kind of got to
Yeah.
try and play. So
Speaking of Yeezys, did you catch Kanye on Joe Rogan? Do you watch that?
no, I haven't. I've been meaning to
Oh
catch that
man,
because I think Kanye's a very interesting fella. So
man, I watched probably the first hour and I'm like, man, this guy is so whacked out. Like you can see there's some brilliance there, but like he's so egotistical and just lost in his own sauce. Like I just was almost sad watching it. But by the end of it, I was so fired up and I was just thinking, like, I understand everything you're saying. Like you're speaking my language. Like I was so like, I got what he was saying. Like it was so weird. And like, you could tell he's still like, once you kind of got through the first hour, you had to get like yourself wrapped around his own neurosis and his own grandiosity in his own head. But when you can kind of strip that away and you see kind of how he views the world, like, man, I thought it was brilliant. I felt so fired. I was so uh, motivated and like fired up after watching that. Like, I watched it at like 9:30 at night and I couldn't even sleep. I was just like, my mind was racing, thinking all these stuff. There's this guy, like, he is brilliant underneath, but like just crazier than a shithouse rat though. Like just like so much of having yes men around him. Like he is very smart and is very brilliant, but just with nobody to slow that down or pump your brakes, you just get way out there on it. And hey, it hasn't hurt him yet, and he's way out there and he's doing great. But man, it was quite interesting. You'll have to catch that one of these days. It's pretty. It's worth the time. It's worth the time for sure.
yeah, it's on the list for sure. I mean, like Kanye
Mm-hmm.
West, like what he's done to, like, I think if you talk to any sneakerhead, they kind of
Mm-hmm.
regard him as kind of the guy who's changed the game the most. Just because,
Mm-hmm.
like, so he started off with Nike and made like the Air Yeezy, right? And those are
Mm-hmm.
like super coveted now, and those kind of changed the game to kind of the more like futuristic looking shoes, so to
Yeah.
speak. And
Yeah.
then now, like, he's with Adidas, right? And he's just pumping out the Yeezys with Adidas, right? And I think like even some of the drops he's selling like, 500,000 pairs worldwide.
Holy
So
shit.
he's like, and he kind of like, he goes against the grain a little bit in the fact that he doesn't want his sneakers to be like hype, and he doesn't want them to be um, like kind of hard to get. Like,
Mm-hmm.
even I remember one drop, it was like when he was talking about when he was going to run for president in 2016, which didn't happen, but he said like Yeezys for everyone if I win president. So he's an interesting character in the fact like how
Yeah.
he kind of views it, and now he's got like he signed on with Gap to make like a
Yeah.
whole
And
product
their
line
stock
and
jump.
and, and line with them.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to see how that kind of comes together, because Gap is definitely not a brand you kind of think like would
No.
be signing like a guy like Kanye West. But
Mhm.
yeah, all to him, like he's definitely set out on his fashion journey and done amazing things. So
Mhm. And then yeah, no, for sure, and I think that's super interesting too. Exactly what he's going to do with Gap, because you saw their stock take a huge jump when he signed on with them, just off his name alone, and what people are excited he's going to do just with his track record of taking companies like that and just taking it to the next level, right? Like when he switched over to Adidas, like you say, like that was words, that was a huge boon for Adidas, right? Like
definitely,
it was kind of game changing when he just has that proven track record that he can do that with anyone, right? If you're the Gap, might as well take a shot at it, right? Just you're going to make your money back pretty quickly, with pretty good rate of return almost. And
hmm
then something else I heard you mention just in passing there with was the Last Dance pumping up those shoes. So I'm guessing you watched that. I don't think I've talked to anyone on the podcast about that
oh
show
man,
yet.
that was like, I found the way the creators made it with like the mixing timelines a little bit
Yeah,
almost hard to follow in a sense.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
because I had a little bit of background knowledge about Michael Jordan, but not a
Mhm.
ton.
But we
Like
didn't live through it. Yeah,
yeah, he was like for
I know
us, it was
exactly what
like
you're
that.
saying.
We were very young. Like he was kind of this, like right when we were being born, so we didn't understand
Mhm.
the impact. Like we knew the name Michael Jordan. That's just like a
Yeah.
definitely a household name, but to kind of like go back and realize like what he did and in his
Yeah.
sport is like, could you imagine winning like 6 championships in only like the limited amount of seasons he had?
Yeah.
It's a crazy thought because
And,
he got what started in '85 and he won his last championship in '98, I think.
yeah, I think so.
So
Yeah,
that's
his
like,
first.
almost every second season he's winning a championship in stats terms, right? Like that's bonkers, right?
It's nuts, man. Like what he did, and what was more impressive to me was just his mindset throughout all that too. And I think what was so cool was, I agree with you, it was a little bit confusing just because we didn't have that exact concrete knowledge of the whole timelines as it went. But I found it was so cool that, like, I'd heard lots of the stories kind of out of context, of some of his crazy, you know, finding motivation stories of just someone slights him in this one way. But it was so cool to see them actually in the context of the historical impact of when those games were happening, who he was going against, what he was doing, and just his mindset was just such next level. Like, I recommend that series to people that don't even like basketball or don't even like sports, just to understand the mindset of what it takes to be that great. And I just think that is what separates him from everyone else, was just he was so willing to go wherever he needed to push and prod and force people to be on his level. And if they couldn't, they didn't hang. And just what he brought out of people, it was so amazing and so intense. I feel like I could watch an episode of that show and just be drenched in sweat at the end, just because like you just lock in with it and just, hop on for that ride, because it was so well done. Oh, I fucking loved it. It was so
Oh
good.
man, the problem with that too is like it was coming out when I think they're releasing on like Thursdays or Sunday nights or something. I can't remember. At
Sunday
like
nights,
six
yeah.
Eastern, right? So 6 Eastern for me was 3 a.m., right? And they were releasing 2 episodes at a
Mhm.
time. So all the time it'd be like 10 p.m. I'd be like, should I stay up? Like,
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
sometimes I did, like, and
Yeah,
then
you
the next
gotta,
day
you
it's just a
gotta.
write off, right? Literally having an
Mhm.
all nighter to watch these Michael Jordan documentaries, but oh man, like it was definitely like I looked forward to it so much, and like
Me
I was
too.
really sad when it was done. Actually, like I was like,
Me
man, like
too. Oh,
that was good quality stuff. Like I'd love to kind of
yeah,
dive in deeper, and like, oh man, I think Dennis
yeah,
Rodman needs like a documentary.
for
That guy
sure.
is like he's
Yeah.
out of this world, man.
Mhm. Have you ever seen the 30 for 30 on the Pistons, like the Bad Boys?
No, no, I should
Oh,
write
it's
that
good
down
too.
though.
If you want a little bit more Rodman, that one. And you know what the best 30 for 30 I ever saw was? I can't remember what it's called, but it was about this guy that like scammed his way into buying the New York Islanders. You ever heard about that?
No, man. There's
Oh
so
my
many good
god! So
30 for 30s, hey?
there's so many good 30 for 30s, like, and for a while they're all on YouTube, like just ripped on YouTube. For I think at some point in university I just found them all and I was watching a ton of them. But there's this one, I can't remember the guy's name, but he had known a few connections. I think he was somehow in tight with the owner of the Cowboys, maybe like Jerry Jones or something, but he knew the right people. And he was telling all this story that he had all this money. It just wasn't liquid and all this stuff. So he was coming in to buy the Islanders, and just on his name alone, he got in there. And for part of a season, he was like the acting owner and was making decisions and shit, and like just kept leading them along. Like, the money's coming. Like, I just need to do this deal. I need to sell this company to liquidize some assets and like move things around. And like they just follow the story of how long he strung it along and how far he got. And apparently the city loved him. They thought he was going to like change the team around, and everyone was like screaming his name and thought he was awesome. But like just the levels that it went to, and just to see it all come crashing down, and that I'd never heard about it until I saw this show. Like, oh, it was so good. I'll have to find the name of that one, send you that one. But yeah, that and whatever the other 30 or 30. Oh, the one on the Detroit Pistons. That one's a real good one. You get to see a little bit of the younger Dennis Rodman, of him first coming to the league, which they covered a bit in The Last Dance, but he was already pretty established when he went there, right? And that's really where he locked in. But
Yeah.
it was interesting to see him come in with those guys, because those like Bill Laimbeer and those fucking crazy bastards. Holy shit, that was some wild basketball. That's what I wish I was alive for. I mean, you always wish you want to see Jordan, but man, I would love to see a couple years before Jordan in their heyday, fucking see them
Hmm.
taking people like this, like the battles with the Celtics they had, like, oh, next level. Which is so funny
Definitely.
because I was never even into basketball that much until third and fourth year, when Fraser and Chase got me into it all the time. Like, you guys would be watching basketball every time the hockey season come to an end. There'd be basketball to watch, and I'd watch it with you guys. You'd explain a bit more of the rules, and I ended up getting quite into it. I really love it now. It's a great sport.
Yeah.
Like, I've watched more basketball this year than I watched football. Like, for some reason, I just can't get into football this year. I'm just dragging ass. Like, I've watched maybe 4 or 5 games, but usually I watch most of the Vikes games, but this year I don't know what it is. I just can't get sucked in.
Oh man, like I think are you playing in any fantasy leagues?
No, I don't understand football enough to even play. I've played in like
Oh, okay.
two or three fantasy leagues that FO got me into, and I was just such a bag of shit. I had no idea who I was putting in, who I was taking out, who these players was. Right, like I might as well put my team on auto draft. So I just like they tried to get me in this year, and I just said no. I said I'll do hockey, but football is just out of my range.
That's interesting actually, because I think you're the first person that I've ever talked to that like didn't just love fantasy. Because for me,
Yeah,
like I didn't even know NFL other than like okay, I knew like Tom Brady and Peyton Manning, but I didn't really know
yeah,
many other people than that. And then FO was trying to get me into the fantasy league, and he's like, "Yeah, come play fantasy. Like we need another guy." I was like, "Ah, dude, I don't watch football. It's not really for me,
yeah.
right?" Like and he's like, "Oh, come on, you'll love it. It's a good time. Or it's only $20 if you don't like it, right?" So I was like, "Okay, whatever, right?" So I did the draft. Had no idea who I was drafting. Pretty much, like, did like 20 minutes of research before, and yeah, that year I just like I fell in love with it. Like I was watching
Yeah.
YouTube videos at work. Like I was like spending weeks on the waiver wire, like setting up lineups and stuff. And that year I actually won it. So like that was like just the
Nice.
icing on the cake, right?
Yeah.
So then it
And
was like after that, I was like, okay, well, I should start a league of my own, right? So I started a league with some of my buddies, and then now I'm in like two other leagues. So I got four leagues going right now.
oh, Jesus, Kyle. Oh, it's so
Yeah,
funny. Oh
and one
man.
of
Yeah,
them's big
I just
buy-in too, man. One of them's like, I think the buy-in was $150, so there's a lot of money on the table.
holy shit, that's not bad. I always just ask them every time they try and get me in now. I just say, well, can I just be an owner? I don't want to run the team. I just want to be in ownership. I want to be fucking James Dolan here. Like just let me fuck up the team. Let me have my one pick of the week, but like I'll pay somebody's dues and just let me be like ride along with them. I want to have the excitement of it without any of the work. That's all I want to do
Yeah.
is just look at the team, see who I'm up against, maybe throw some chirps out, but that's about the extent of it.
Yeah.
And what always drove me nuts was Chase and Fraser be so into this fantasy football. And have you ever seen The League on FX? It's like a TV show. It's like a sitcom about a bunch of guys that are in a fantasy football league together.
I
And
gotta
it
watch
is
this
the
too.
oh man, it's so funny. And it's funny because the seasons go along like with like the actual storylines of like the NFL. So like they'll actually talk about like the and storylines of what are happening. They'll work that into like the storylines of the TV show, and it's so funny. Like Steve Renazizi's in it, Nick Kroll's in it, like a bunch of really funny comedians are all in it, and it's like the funniest show ever. And I can't convince Fraser or Chase to watch it. And they're both
Really?
obsessed with fantasy football,
That's
and I just can't
yeah,
get them
that's
to for
interesting.
whatever reason. I know I'm gonna keep bugging them about it, but no, it's a great show. Definitely check it out.
Yeah,
Oh
but I
man,
almost find
yeah,
like for me at this point with like how many fantasy leagues I'm in is like
Mhm.
it almost takes away the focus from football to just strictly fantasy. So like for
Yeah,
example, like Sunday, I'll have like my streaming games. I'll have the audio on one game and then just the video from the other five games going, and I'm flipping back and forth. But then like
yeah,
it's almost stressful because it's like okay, well, I have this guy in this league, but I'm playing against him in two other leagues, so I kind of want him to do
yeah,
bad. But then by the end of the day, you might be like winning in two of those leagues, and it's tight in the other one. So
Mhm.
it's like, okay, now I want him to do good, and it's like I almost like can't even just enjoy a game now. It's just like stressful.
Right.
It's just like it's funny it's gone to that point. But yeah, man, like I'm all about it. And honestly, like I think it was last year I got down to see two like live games. So when I went down to San Fran, I catch the game in Oakland with him against the Chiefs, and then I also
Nice.
went down to Denver with some buddies and went to Mile High and watched the game there. And like live football and like tailgating is, I don't think there's any sport that comes close.
Yeah,
Maybe college football, but like that's kind of
yeah.
the same sport, right? So
Mhm.
like yeah, hockey doesn't come close. I mean, like I've been to like I went to game 4 of the Cup Finals when the Flames were playing Lightning back in '04, and like I mean that place was loud, but it was still like
Yeah.
nothing compared to a football game. I don't think so. It's
Yeah.
yeah, it's a different beast, football.
Mhm. I've only been to one NFL game and one college game. A couple years ago, me and Chase went down for a weekend. We went to a comedy festival Friday, drove to Tucson the next day from Phoenix, and caught a college game, Tucson versus Oregon, and then went to the Cardinals game on Sunday, and then flew back Monday. And man, that was a fun weekend. Like, oh, you're right. The college game was nuts, but just yeah, the tailgating, just the size, the spectacle of. I've been to two college games. I went to the Fiesta Bowl with my dad one time on New Year's. That was fucking cool, man. Oh, that was so sweet. Like it was Arizona versus who has the blue field in college?
The
Boise?
Bluefield. Oh, I don't
I
really
think
know
it's
college
Boise.
too well, to be honest.
Yeah.
So,
I think it was Boise and Arizona, and just the fact that Arizona ended up in the Fiesta Bowl that was hosted in Phoenix was just like super
oh
cool. So
yeah,
we thought it was going to be packed, like just straight Arizona fans, right? It's hometown, but I don't know how far Boise is from Arizona, but it was packed with their fans. They all drove, like when you're driving around town, you just see like these full blue trucks and blue vans and stuff. Like they brought the half of fucking Idaho with them because like it was packed, man. Like it was way rowdier for them than it was for Arizona. Like it was just people full dressed up, head to toe, face paint, body paint, blue, and like it was such a good game and so exciting, man. Oh, it was so awesome. Then we're leaving the next day. Ingo had just got this his nice car down there. He would never buy nice vehicles. He's always wanted to be modest with what he does, but he finally bought this car that's a little bit flashy, not a crazy sports car, but a Mercedes, and he loves his car. He's had it for a little bit, and we're leaving the Fiesta Bowl, and my mom and my sister were shopping while we went, and we hop in with him. We're leaving, and we're in gridlock traffic, and this young kid, he's maybe 17, rear ends him. Oh, I've never seen him get out of that. Oh, so he goes out of the car and we pulled over and I didn't know this, but at the time, but it was a young kid in his parents' vehicle and he's just scared shitless and no damage on nothing. But it was just one of those times where it was so funny after the fact, but during, not a fun time. Oh, I thought there was going to be some sparks flying there, but just the craziness of that day, just all the adrenaline going to the game, coming out, just talking about how fun it was to that. You see that happen. Just like, no, there's no way that just happened, right? He gets out. Oh man, I'm locked in the back. Couldn't get out if I wanted to.
I feel like I've been listening to quite a few of your podcasts, and it seems like your pops comes up so often, man. Like I think you got to bring him on the pod.
Episode 100.
Yeah, is that the goal?
That's the plan. One of my big idols and just someone I really look up to, Lex Friedman, who also I talk about all the time on the podcast, and I think he's just pretty cool dude. He had his dad on for his 100th episode, and you could very much see how much comes from it. Yeah, and definitely he is one of those guys where so much of who I am is modeled after him, and just growing up trying to be like him and trying to exemplify what I like about him and what I don't. And I think for a long time I was so focused on being like him that I didn't give myself a lot of room to think of what I like and what I want to be. And I think just lately in the last couple of years, it's been nice to try and find that balance of I can take exactly what I like from Ingo and try and exemplify that. And then the other areas I can work on that and I can learn from it and try and, plug the holes where I see it in him and become a better version. I feel like, and that's got me excited to have my own kids just to see, because I look up to him so much and I see him just as this, just this perfect human, but that led me astray a lot of times because I just thought he could do no wrong and he was so perfect that I would not lie, but just overlook other things. And instead of just being okay with that and forgiveness, nobody's perfect, and understanding that and not holding yourself to that, because I held him to such a high esteem that he could do no wrong, that I think I would hold that same level for me. And that's why I was so hard on myself all the time and always beat myself up, because I wanted to be perfect like that. I could never show any weakness, never show any failures, just be 100% on all the time. But I think the last little bit, it's been about, finding the good and the bad and just finding what I want to be and just taking those pieces that I want to bring forward of what he is too. So yeah, definitely episode 100 is the plan right now. It could change. I mean, I've changed my plans with what I want to do with this, but I just wanted to give myself time to get comfortable on the podcast, to work through myself. I also think that, like, as much as all that is true and all the positive things too, I think so much of what I don't like about myself and so much of my issues all stem from my relationship with him too. And I want to make sure that I'm in a place where I understand them enough in myself so I could have a discussion with him in a good way and almost be ready for it. Like, I almost feel like I need to build up and do a lot more work with myself to understand myself better, to be able to have that conversation with him. And I'm sure we could do it right now and it'd be great. But I feel like leaving it to episode 100 is kind of just a cool idea I had in my head for it. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
It's something that might change, but yeah, no, I definitely have thought a lot about it, and I completely agree with you. He's gonna, and I think once I have him on once, I think he'll be a big crowd favorite and probably be on all the time. he'll be promoting his own episode pretty heavy. He likes to make sure people know that he's the top dog. But no, it's definitely something I'm excited for. Just got to fucking keep crushing these episodes out, and episode 100 will be here before I know it.
Yeah, sounds like you could get pretty deep with him too. And maybe you should like pull a play out of Joe Rogan's book and like do a little mushrooms before with him. You think he'd be up for that?
Yeah, I don't know. I'd have to ask him about it. I think I've never heard the stories from him, but I've heard some secondhand stories of him back in the days on the farm in Sangudo, of him being a pretty wild little farm boy back in the day. So maybe I can convince him back to his roots. But he's pretty straight laced. I don't know. He doesn't even. I can probably count on my hands the amount of times I've ever seen him like pretty drunk. Even like he just he doesn't like to lose control a lot. He likes to be, he likes to have fun too. And he's not a wet towel by any means. I mean, nobody's ever met him would ever say that, but definitely doesn't let her go out of control too much. But it sure is fucking awesome when it does. Everybody loves it. Like if he gets drunk one night, people will talk about it. The people that are there, like I'll tell a story. I don't give a fuck. One time. I think he was over at our buddy Simon's house, and they were just having a couple beers. But remember those Bud Light Platinums that came out?
Oh yeah, man, those are like heaven's nectar, man.
Oh, those are great. And in his defense, I did the exact same thing about 3 times. Like, just didn't realize that they're 6% instead of 4% because they taste just like Bud Light, but it's this Bud Light Platinum, so it had another 2% on it, which you wouldn't think would make that much difference, but it sure does. So he had, I don't know, just was drinking those, having a good time. And I think he got a little drunker than he thought he was. And my sister went and picked him up, and all of the stories we have of that night coming home, because it's not like he did anything that crazy, but just to see him any type of out of control, like whatever it is so funny to see, just because he never lets it happen. But oh man, the stories I could tell of that guy. Oh, good times. But episode 100, there'll be those stories coming out. Yeah.
I'll keep it to that.
I have to keep myself to it. That's what I kind of like about this too, is saying stuff on the podcast kind of holds me accountable to it too, right? Like when you say something like that, oh well, now it's for real. I've said it on the podcast. It's not just in my little brain, except I forget what I say on the podcast half the time, so I didn't really know. But oh well.
Yeah, actually, I was listening to that pod you had with the fellow from Venezuela, and he was like big on the accountability factor, right? And I think like just having an outlet like this to kind of say stuff and keep you accountable is huge, because I think that's something like not a lot of people are real with. Like we talk about, we have these goals or these hopes and stuff, and we just kind of see them in our own mind and keep them there, and they flutter away, and you just forget about them, right? When like they can actually have some like real benefit, some substance to it. So even actually lately, like I've been it was the start of October, so it's kind of like the last quarter of the year, right? So I was kind of like, oh, you know what? Like I'm gonna write down some goals, right? Because I've never been kind of a really big goal setter. Like I've always kind of found it cheesy and like I don't know. Oh yeah, set your goals. Like just kind of I don't know. Like I saw the benefit of it, but it was just another thing. Like I just kind of brushed off. But like this time I actually was like, okay, well I got a couple of goals. Like a couple of them were like I wanted to finish 2 books by the end of the year. Like I was horrible for not being able to read. Like before I got to Saudi Arabia, the last book I read start to finish was The Outsiders in grade 8. Like in high school, I never read a full book, right? In university, I never read a full book, right? And I know there's so many benefits to reading. And I always joke with my mom. She was like, oh, I'll get you books. Mom, I don't know how to read. I don't know why I keep saying this. Right? So like I wrote a couple down. Like I want to finish off 2 books. I wanted to get into like meditation was one of them too. I got a couple goals at work that I've written down, and like even just I find like once in a while I'll just bring up my list and kind of look at it. Okay, well I'm on track for some of these, some of them I'm not. So like, what do I got to change, or has my outlook or my scope changed for what I want to get out by the end of the year? But I think that's actually been like just kind of a form of self accountability that's been touched on a lot better, just because once they're written down, like they're there, right? Whereas like usually like I think of something I want to achieve, and then it's a month later where I like kind of this I had, and then it's a month later I'm like, I kind of brush it off, right? So I think it's like using this podcast as a form of accountability, I think is a very great tool for not only yourself but like anybody who comes on it, right? So
yeah, exactly, and it doesn't have to be a podcast. Like I liked your idea of I think writing down really helps. Like just putting your goals on paper really helps, or even if it's not a goal, just anything that's important to you, putting it on paper. I think also been hearing lots of people I look up to just talking about just speaking it out loud, even if you're in a room by yourself or you're in your car, just
Mm-hmm.
speak it out loud and make it true. Or just so much of the time, like I have so many goals of what I want to do with this podcast and what I want to grow it into, and like so many business ideas and spin-offs of it, and just like I have this crazy elaborate plan in my head, but I always tell it to like my girlfriend. Like I always just will walk around the house and I'll have some crazy idea for like I want to, I'm trying to pick one of my goals that I can let loose on the podcast without, because now the accountability thing is one of those things where now I don't want to say it if I'm not 100% sure, but like I want to start my own, like not a university, but like some sort of different way. I feel like I'm so disenfranchised with the university system, and I learned so much more through podcasts and people that I feel like you could put together and I've talked about this idea a little bit on the podcast with some people, but I never really fully fleshed it out as much as I have off the podcast, of just, you could put, like if I wanted to go back through all these podcasts I've listened to over the past 4 years, like there's probably thousands and thousands of podcasts, and isolate the ones that meant a lot to me, that I learned a lot, and make a curriculum of them, and put that
Right.
together and made it free for people to watch, and you just go through, and then people would listen to them. You could either do that, or you could add a set of questions to them, just like a school degree, to make sure that people are actually engaged in them and are actually getting the things out of them. And you could prove it to people, but it'd be absolutely free. You'd learn a ton, and it takes away the power of these huge universities that can just ring you out for coin and not really give you much. I mean, some degrees like engineering, for example, you're actually getting something tangible out of it. But there's so many of these degrees where you could learn it better online from people that are more excited to teach you about it. It's going to be more connection. You're going to really buy into it, and you can do it for free. And you can start at 14. You could, you don't need to wait till you're a certain age to walk into these hallowed buildings where all this knowledge is supposed to be stored. Since the day the internet was born, the traditional university has kind of fallen to the, it's in a long, slow spin down. I mean, there's always going to be places for them, but just not on the scale and the expansion that they have. Like it needs to be more specialized, and some of these need to be found in a different medium. And I think that's one of those things where I just have an idea about it, and I'm thinking like, man, I think I can make that happen eventually, and like just things like that are just cool ideas. But I guess the whole point, I was trying to remember why I even got onto the subject, was just I always just say them out loud, even if it's just to my girlfriend, just to hear them, and just yeah, whatever, you're going to do it one day, right? Like I have this grandiose image in my head, but you're right, just to get it out, whether it's on paper, whether it's out loud to somebody or to nobody. It's just about, don't let it squander away in your head and flit away till you forget about it, right? It's just getting that out there.
Yeah. No, I think that's an interesting idea with like kind of making a a learning platform, because I totally agree. Like we're in an age now where you can learn so much online. Like if you want to learn even the technical classes, like the stats and the linear algebra and those kind of things, like you can find so much free material online on YouTube or Khan Academy or whatever. And then like the kind of the more deeper understanding classes, like there's so many like podcasts and those kind of things that you can touch on to kind of further your knowledge
YouTube
in certain
videos
subjects.
Yeah.
And I think like Elon Musk said it, like he says, like, I don't think you really need to go to college anymore, like, or university. Just like, I think it kind of proves that you can do chores, I think is the term he used for it.
Yeah.
Which is kind of true. Like you can, if you have a university degree, you definitely got a head on your shoulders and stuff. But it was basically like, okay, can you do your assignments? Can you cram for a week before the test? Okay, yeah, here's your certificate. Can you do that for 4 years?
Yeah.
Boom, here you go, right? And I think there definitely is like an expectation right now of like, that's kind of the plan. Like 40 years ago, the plan was you go to school, you graduate high school, you marry your high school sweetheart, you get a job, and you have a family, right? And now I think the expectations change a little bit to more like, you go to high school, you graduate, you go to university. And I think so many people just go to university blindly. Like they go, oh, I'll do physics. I like physics in high school, so I'm gonna do a physics degree. And then they get into it, and they're like, what? Like, what am I doing? And you see, and that's why I think I think it's like less than 50% of people graduate with a major other than what they started with.
Right.
So like you see it so often that people are like flip flopping between ideas, which is great. Like I think if you're in a role or in a major that you don't see like a lot of value in, or a lot of like long-term career progression in, like get out of that. It doesn't matter if you're a semester in or 3 semesters in. Like the worst thing you can do is like force it on you,
Oh,
because like
yeah.
you're going to graduate with that, and or maybe like I'll just graduate it with it and then I'll take an after degree in something, and I think that's a great option too. But I think like the
Mhm.
worst thing people can do is kind of settle and be like, oh well, I'm in this and I'm almost done, and I know it's like a
Yeah.
good stable career, so I'm just going to do it. And it's just like, oh man, you're not burning your passion and stoking the fire there. And I think
Yeah.
that's going to be detrimental in your life. And I think even once you get into your career, you'll kind of quickly learn like, okay, well, a year or 2 years or 5 years in, you're going to just lose that passion. Your work's going to suffer and you're not going to be a good
Yeah.
employee or whatever you're doing. And yeah, I think like we can totally move towards like a more almost like decentralized learning platform. But
Hmm.
I think the
Hmm.
problem with that is like companies are really going to struggle to figure out like, okay, well, who's actually qualified to do this job, because like an interview process of an hour only proves so much, right? Or even if you do like a
Hmm.
half day kind of like building exercise, right? Like that's going to be pretty difficult to kind of figure out who your good candidates are. But I mean, where we're
Yeah.
at right now with like using a university degree as a vetting tool, like maybe isn't the best way either, by all means
Hmm.
too. So
Yeah. Like that's what I equate it to. Like when I look at a resume and I see somebody has a degree on it,
hmm
now that I have an understanding of what that degree means a little bit more, so I have so much different idea about what that is and what that's going to tell me about that person. Whereas if I could see on there that somebody had listened to, let's just say, 500 hours of Joe Rogan podcasts, I would put more weight on that person that would invest their time and enjoy it and could see the value in that. Or I mean, I just use Joe Rogan because he's the top dog, but I mean, I could
hmm
substitute any one of 10 different people into that name. But I just think that is where it's coming from. So if you could find a certain mixture, right? Because then it would never be barred. Everybody could create their own, right? Like Joe Rogan could create his, it could be 10 podcasts or it could be 100 podcasts. And it doesn't have to be podcasts. It could be a mixture of YouTube videos, podcasts, just all these internet, um, whatever you call it. I don't know. Content. Sure. All these,
yeah,
all these different types of internet content into it. And then you could name it, right? That would be the Joe Rogan curriculum or whatever. And then you would
yeah,
see people go through it, whether there's questions attached to it or you just had to get through the content, right? And you could have really big ones, really small ones, but then you would start to equate weight to what you saw the results out of those people, right? If Fortune 500 companies started to hire all these people that took this one curriculum of all these things and really equated with that and really you could start to put cachet onto it and know just the certain knowledge bases too, because you would understand what you're starting to get out of somebody that has an understanding too. And you could even use it
definitely.
as training methods if you found one that was just a really good, well-rounded one to bring good decency in, like just the knowledge of decency, because that's what I think. It's so much less of like the hard skills that it's teaching you, and it's more about mindset and how you are and how you treat people, and almost where you like almost your base of operations that things come out of. Like I always say, like my favorite podcasters are the ones that are based in love and compassion. I know that sounds really silly, but I mean it in a less silly way. Like I feel like a Joe Rogan or a Lex Friedman, they're always they care about people and they can be hard, but they're always want people to succeed and they want the best for people. And I feel like that is the lessons that it maybe not talked about that explicitly on every one of their episodes, but it's always in an undercurrent. And I feel like that's what you pick up on when you listen to somebody for 300 hours, 400 hours. It's those undercurrents of who they are and what they bring out of people. And that's what I think is powerful about lots of those things. And I feel like that's what I would want to teach everybody that I wanted around me, is those
hmm
type of things, right? So if I had a company, if I could find one of those where whatever mix of content it was that got something like that across, you could even take it and give it to your employees to go through and hope that not all of them would get the same things out of it, but hopefully a certain percentage of them would get a certain percentage of what you're hoping out of that, and would help bring
right.
the level of your whole team, right? Or it could be your kids. You could find some that, this is another big piece is I want kids one day really bad, but I'm terrified of school and the education system. And I just found that I was so uh, disappointed with how things work, and it's nobody's fault. It's just economies of scale. When you're trying to teach 40 kids at once, you have to go to kind of the basics. You can't really give everyone the special attention that they need. But I don't
Right.
want my kids to suffer from that, right? Like, and that's something that I actually heard on the Cugnet podcast. He was talking about how his kids, it's him and a bunch of other really special people, all kind of homeschool together, and they build this framework that teaches their kids with all these people, because they're all, don't want to trust a school system. I feel like that is going to be the future of what we go to, and probably not in all areas, and probably wouldn't work in small towns and communities like that. But I think in bigger areas, you're going to start to see that, and just different ideas like that. Like it doesn't have to be any of those ideas, like my idea about like education, or that idea about, kind of younger education. I just get excited about new ways of doing things, just because I feel like the way we're doing things now is so antiquated that I don't know what the solution is, but there needs to be a solution. We need to be working on it, right? Like we need to try something else and see what we can
Mm-hmm.
work towards. It doesn't mean it has to be any of those things I already mentioned. It could be, something we haven't even seen yet. And I'm sure it will. I mean, when you see a big disruption like this COVID thing, I mean, that's kind of a big shocker to the system that's going to spark change in some way or another. You just don't know which way that's going to go, but I'm excited to see it. I think it's
Yeah.
going to be, I think it's going to be interesting.
I think it's definitely like when you look at how our education system is developed and based, it's very kind of like slow moving and hard to change. Like if you look at what we're learning now, it's kind of
Mm-hmm.
the same stuff we've been learning for the last 40 years, and I think the education itself is it's resistant to change as well, because like it does take a lot of work to overhaul a
Mm-hmm.
curriculum, and it hasn't really developed with the times. Like if you look
Yeah.
at, I think it was actually like Doug Ford in Ontario that now in his curriculum he has coding and he has financial literacy, which I
Wow.
think is
Like that's
like
a huge
impeccable. Like
step forward.
that I think is like is critical going forward. Like if you look
You
at
throw psychology. Yeah.
how many people
You
like
throw
are
psychology on
computer
top of
code.
that.
Yeah,
Sorry, I
exactly.
keep
Like
interrupting you, brother.
yeah, like if you I think another class that like kind of needs to be taught is like understanding like emotions and stuff, and dealing
Mm-hmm.
with stress and
Yeah.
anxiety and that kind of thing, and like just
Mm-hmm.
getting and starting to like it's a super buzzword to say, oh, okay, like end the stigma, normalize like mental
Mm-hmm.
health issues. It's like, well, if you want to like actually do something about it, like put it in curriculum then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like teach kids
Couldn't
about
agree
this
more.
from a young age, right? And
Yeah.
teach them like about the dangers of social media and the impacts that has. But the
Mm-hmm.
problem is like we're kind of just starting to realize those impacts now, and like
Yeah.
that technology train won't stop, right? Like it'll,
Mm-hmm.
once you open the box, it Pandora's box, you can't close it, right? But on the other hand
Yeah.
too, like I see it kind of irritates me a lot when I see like these memes on Facebook and stuff where it's like, oh, I in high school, thank God I know Pythagorean's theorem, but I still don't know how to do my taxes. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like these basic life skills and stuff, you can learn all that on yourself. Like get off Netflix and like take some onus on yourself, and
Yeah. Yeah.
like how to do an oil change, Google, boom, YouTube, right? It's there, right?
Mm-hmm.
How to do your taxes, right? Sure, maybe you like are scared because it's taxes and like you don't want to mess that up and mess with CRA, but you can at least get like a decent idea, and then maybe everyone's got a friend who's an accountant, right? And run it by them or
Yeah.
something, right? Or like how do mortgages work? Like there's so much material out there on
Mm-hmm.
that. So like I think as a society we need to start, instead of just blaming the education system for,
Take some accountability.
yeah, take some accountability in ourselves, and even from, I think being a good parent is such like an underrated skill, because like if you can start to like cultivate that learning for your kids and enable
Mm-hmm.
them to like think critically
Mm-hmm.
about these things and kind of like teach some self-awareness to them, I think that like that is like unparalleled, and I think it's like a bit of a lost art. Like I look at my parents and like they did a great job at like raising me and allowing me,
Mm-hmm.
teaching me about perspective and your point of view, and
Yeah.
how to communicate. Like they, and like they gave up a lot too, because what they kind of did with their working situation was like my mom worked as a caterer, so she always worked like evenings and weekends, and like she would
Mm-hmm.
get us up for school and send us on our way, right, and that kind of thing. And then my dad worked at he was mostly at the post office when we were young, so he kind of worked that 9 to 5 job, right? So there's
Mm-hmm.
always someone around. But like you see so many parents that are just like super career focused, which I think is a good thing to some extent, but then they just get raised by the daycare lady, and it's just
Mm-hmm.
like they're not really taught lessons, but like a daycare lady's not going to sit your kid down and teach him about,
Yeah.
you know, how to communicate and problem solve, right? Like they're just there to
Mhm.
like watch over kids, right? So I think like, yeah, like I think it's such a, yeah, like a bit of a lost art of like, you know, there's some excellent parents out there and some bad parents, but I think as individuals, we need to start taking some onus not only for our own learning, but for, like if we're gonna have kids, I think we have to kind of sit and realize like, okay, well, we're gonna have to teach them about problems that even ones that we never really experienced, right? Because like social media for
Mhm.
us was there, but
Yeah.
it wasn't like a super. I think not until like maybe university that it like really took off as like a super. You know, the
Yeah.
phone was already in your always in your hand, or maybe high school for us. But yeah, like junior
Yeah.
high, like
High
I didn't
school
have a
probably.
phone until maybe grade 8 or grade 9, but like
Yeah.
man,
Yeah.
I
Both same
bet
with
if you
me.
went to a school now, like every kid's got a phone and a
For
vape, man.
sure.
Every kid's got one.
You get it when you enter grade 6. There's a phone and a vape at the front
Yeah.
door. Oh man, that's so funny. And yeah, you hit so many good points. I don't even know where to start there. I think definitely we are not even aware of the wave that's about to come crashing at us. I think you're so right about some sort of psychology or mental health into the curriculum because these kids are dealing with it and we haven't seen it. I was just thinking this the other day. Is I think there's going to be a game changing amount of optometry that's going to be needed for the generations because we haven't seen the long term effects of these studies that's going on. Because essentially, what's happening by shoving a screen, 18 inches from our faces, 50% of a day from the time we're 14 was never a study done. You know what I mean? Like that
Right.
only started when the iPhone came out in 2008. So we're probably those people that around that time we got a screen when we could get a screen when
Hmm.
screens were invented. Our age group is that exact test case to see what happens with our eyes, right? And that's just one example, right, of how your eyes work, of being in front of a computer, being in front of a screen. But now you take that, and now what happens when you get social media to the degree it is now, starting at grade 4, grade 5? We don't know the effects of that study. We don't know what's coming down the pipe of what type of people that's going to create, what type of traumas, what type of anxieties, and you can start to see the results in terms of childhood suicide rates, and especially in young women, is just astronomical. And you wonder to yourself why, but you have to go to social media and those type of things, right? Like we just don't know what's coming down the pipe with things like this. We see the current positives and we don't even think about the long-term negatives. You know what I mean? And it's
Definitely.
very
Yeah.
scary to think of just what is going to manifest, because it's a tough time in high school, but that compounds, and you don't get help, and you let those anxieties start to rule your life. You get through university, and you're a mess by the time you come out of it, because you've had so much pushing you, and all these different narratives and all the social media telling you you're not shit, and you see all these people that have these perfect lives, like you said, on Instagram. You just see people being perfect. That's going to warp your sense of self-worth. Is if you have that your whole life, that's all you grew up seeing is just everyone around you. And not only, it sucked when we were young and everyone had a party and didn't know about it. Now you got to watch the highlights of that on Snapchat and Instagram.
Oh
Oh,
yeah.
just I feel for all these kids that are coming out. Like, it's just, but what do? You can't reverse it. You can't take it back. But I think the first step is to try and at least arm kids with a couple tools in terms of dealing with it, and then helping to fight against it in terms of their own mental health, and then arming them with knowledge about that, like you say, about the negative effects, that at least they're on guard for it, right? Because I think even still, we're walking our kids into the mouth of the lion without even doing our best to explain exactly what consequences can come from falling into these rabbit holes of social media, and the tricks they can play and the narratives they can put inside of you, right? Like,
Yeah. Well, that's exactly
worrisome.
it. Like I think like you can kind of make the comparison of like if you're getting a phone for your kid, like, you know, and you're not
Mm-hmm.
having like a big discussion about like, you know, what all these tools are and what the,
Mm-hmm.
you know, what you can do with it, and understanding what your kid's doing on it, right? If you're not having those
Yeah.
conversations with him, it's kind of like, you know, if you were to give like prescribe someone like an opioid or a Percocet without telling him like that this is gonna be bad. Like
Mm-hmm.
he's just gonna like, you know, pop it like Advil normally to deal with the pain, and then all of a sudden 2 weeks later he's like hooked on it, right? And he can't get out of bed because he's like super depressed, right? But if you tell him from the
Mm-hmm.
get go, like, hey, this drug's like, you know, super addictive, so like it's a super effective painkiller, so you know take it at your own risk, right? then you're definitely going to approach how you dive into that substance completely different, right? And I think a phone's no different. So
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, letting them know the side effects and the consequences is super important too. And then also giving them a couple red flags to look out for, right? Like just, hey, you might, if you do get too sucked into it, or maybe you're using unhealthy, maybe this is what you'll see. Maybe this is what you'll feel, just so they can start to look out for it too, because I feel like they're going through so blind. They start to feel these feelings and they have nobody to talk to about them and no resources to let them know kind of that it's a natural thing and that's perfectly normal to be feeling on top of all the other things that people are going through, right? Like so many kids are getting a phone when they're also going through a big transitionatory phase with themselves. Like there's like, can you imagine just how, just think back to how confusing like the time of puberty is and going through all those changes and, trying to find who you are and find your own place in the world. That's hard enough on top of it. Then you layer all those extra layers of social media and the culture and all of that on top of it. Like, that's a tough storm to navigate for anybody. Even trying to think of it as an adult to go back and navigate those waters as a kid, that'd be tough. Like imagine now you're, hormoned up and crazy and emotional and you haven't been armed with the tools to deal with those. You've just been kind of told to soldier on. And, especially as guys, it's not cool to cry. You got to just tough it out and sign these things. So we have no tools at our disposal. We just go in blind like these warriors running off to war with frickin' spoons in our hands. Well, we'll figure it out. This is all I got. You know what I mean? So, that's one thing. But I think more and more with stuff like The Social Dilemma, which I still haven't watched, but stuff like that kind of bringing awareness to. Oh, and here's the other thing I wanted to mention was I agree so much with that point, Kyle, about taking some accountability and learning that there are, with the internet at your disposal, you can do anything. You just have to believe in it. And I think what is holding people back is that it's some sort of narrative that is pushed all over the place that helps you, that prevents you from realizing your own potential. And they don't want you to realize that you can do anything if you want to move towards it. I feel like that's exactly what I'm looking for in my teaching. I feel like teaching people to get to their potential is what I was looking for in university, and what I was very disappointed in seeing was missing. All they want to do is hold your hand, give you these assignments, right? It's just like high school. Like they're going to baby you, treat you like children, and then you get out in the world and you don't know how to solve anything, right? You don't know, you haven't been put under any pressures that isn't that one specific pressure of just deadline pressure and working with a group. There's certain things you get, but it's very narrow. And that's what I found when I got into podcasts. That was the thing that it showed me, of just like, that's all bullshit. You can do anything you want. You got the internet at your disposal. If you really care about something, you're passionate about it, if you put the effort in, you can get there, right? And that is almost and that's where I'm seeing so much in podcasts. I feel like the best one for this is Joey Diaz. He's a comedian. He was hooked on coke for 30, 40 years of his life. His dad died when he was 5. They were immigrants from Cuba. They moved up to New York. They ran a bar there. His dad died when he was about 5. When he was, I think, 14, he was high on acid, came home and found his mom dead, like lived on the streets, had no money, found comedy, and he just has the craziest, wildest life, but is so positive and has such a good outlook and is the funniest motherfucker ever. But like, he can teach you life lessons that you will never get in any classroom. And it's so important and so perspective shifting that it's, I wish that could be a curriculum. I wish listening to Joey Diaz talk about his story and what he got out of it should be mandatory viewing for everybody growing up, and every kid. If there's any 16-year-old kid out there that wants to learn what it is to be a man in a real sense, with respect and how to treat people, and you're gonna fuck up in the bad things, because he did some fucked up shit, but he's honest about it, and he admits to it, and has talked about the depth at which he's thought about the good and the bad, and worked to make amends with people, and it's just so powerful. But like guys like him and guys like Joe Rogan just can show more of how to unlock what's inside every one of us, that I feel like is just not taught anywhere else, because it's not in their best interest to unlock that in everybody. They want to keep that skill to just a select few, and then keep all the other workers. Just, you don't need to unlock that. You need to just do what you're told. Just come to work, screw on the nuts in the order we tell you. Next rules roll in, you screw on the nuts, whatever order we tell you, and just let it go. We don't want you asking questions. We don't want you, trying to change it up and find a better way to do it. We just want you to follow our directions, right? And I feel like that's the shift that needs to happen, and that's the stagnation that we've seen, because since about 1970, there's been no new innovation at the real basis of physics of things that we didn't already theoretically know were there. We just have been proving things, but we've hit a real standstill, and it's always equated to a pie, right? Like there was like in the U.S. or just Western civilization, there was this pie that was always growing, and we were always getting more and more because we were, finding these huge advances in science just based on having better tools to look, better microscopes to look down deeper, and we're finding more discoveries there. Better telescopes to look farther. We're just, having innovation just by the sake of better tools to investigate our natural surroundings, and that hit a stop. And now we're other than like technology and like chip technology, which is really on the forefront and has a lot of growth. We're not seeing that growth, and we're now just dividing this pie up, and it's not growing, and it's going more and more to these companies that are huge, right? Like everyone's sitting, it's like, oh, we're all growing, the GDP is growing, we all must be doing better. But in reality, people are going, man, it doesn't feel better, because it seems like my parents, were 25 and they had bought a house and had pretty stable jobs already. You know what I mean? Like, but our GDP is growing and everything's growing, but it's because those slices of pie are going to these big corporations, and the actual median income compared to the cost of goods and inflation is not going up, and we don't see any of that, right? And that's because I think we've worked so hard on closing people down from actually opening up their potential and really expanding on that and really making changes in the world and chasing what they're passionate about. We just have a bunch of worker bees that are just, following directions and doing what they want, and that's okay for some people, and they can be satisfied with that, but that's not where the real game changers are going to be from, right? Like, you have 300 million people, 350 million people in the US. If you could really tap into the potential of all those things, of what you could change, right? Or even use Canada, 35 million people, there's going to be some Einsteins in there that aren't fully utilized because they get stuck into this path of what they're told they should be doing, and they're not allowed to explore where they would naturally go, right?
Right.
It's just interesting to me to think about that and wonder what we can do to change. And I think that's where things like podcasts and people like Joe Rogan and Joey Diaz are telling people to, fuck that. You can do whatever you want. Find your passion and chase it. See where it takes you. It might take you somewhere else. You might find a new passion along the way where you change course, but just be passionate and chase that. Don't take what's given to you. And I think that's the message that I want more people to get, and I wish was somehow in our grade school curriculums. But if not, then in some other curriculum, some other place. Like I thought that would be what university was, but very clearly when I got there, was not. And it was almost exactly the opposite, right? And we're just telling you to fall into this cookie cutter. Don't even try and find your own ways, right? If you don't agree with what the status quo of what this narrative of this course is supposed to be, we're going to fail you. Even if you can make a good argument for your own way, that's not what we want here.
Yeah. I think like just touching on that passion element too, like I think that's like pretty much, you could almost debate like the only like long-term fuel you have for if you're like trying to drive something, right? So if you're trying to get a career off the ground, right? And it's like, well, like if you look at the motivations, like, oh, okay, the job's stable, it has a good salary and stuff, like you're going to be so unfulfilled in life, right? Yeah. So then if you can add passion to anything, even if like, it's missing some other like elements that are kind of desirable in what you're pursuing, right? If you have that passion to drive you, like you'll create those things for you, right? So like, for example, like with job security, right? Like if you get into a job that's pretty volatile, but you're passionate about it, like people are going to see that, and your product's going to be better, your service is going to be better, and you're going to be able to create job security for yourself, right? You're going to be able to create that income for yourself. So yeah, like I definitely agree. Like we need to start like figuring out how we can fuel people's passions. And I think it's come a little bit of ways. Like you always talk about it with like video games, people like that's been something that's completely blown up, and like, then that's something like people are very passionate about. So like I look at that and like I'm kind of like the outside looking in. Like I was a big Call of Duty guy in junior high, and that's kind of as far as my gaming career went. But yeah, that's something I kind of look at, and it's like I have a lot of respect for a lot of those guys. Like some people, oh, they're just like streamers, right? It's like, well, look at the empire they've built, right?
Yeah, and look at the happiness they get to create. They get to make money doing what they love. They get to make money playing video games, right? And that was something that I always secretly wanted to do, but was always scared to do for whatever reason. I just hadn't, realized that idea of, oh, I can do anything I put my mind towards, right? And I hadn't had that vision yet. But I remember one time I was in Edmonton running with my sister. This must have been when I first moved to GP, and she asked me, like, what would you do if you could do anything? And I said, like, oh, I'd probably stream video games. I think that'd be like if I could make money at it, I think that'd be the happiest I could be. And then it just kind of fell out because I never really put passion towards it. But I mean, hey, about accountability, I have about $3,000 worth of PC parts sitting outside in the living room about to be built, and I'm going to take a crack at streaming and try it out here once I can get that all built and try it, because it's just one of those things. I'm trying to make money. It's something I love doing this, and I figured why not try and build as many different factors of that of doing things I love, because I love video games. I always love video games. I love to talk about them. I love the speed running. I love the communities around them. And I just never took a crack at it because I just thought, oh, I can't do that. That's for other people. But fuck it, I can take a try at it, right? And I can try it out. So I've taken the first steps to, get the equipment I need, and then I can see from there. Maybe it's something I don't like. Maybe it's something I just do every once in a while. Maybe it's something I, invest a little bit into. And the way I see it too is, you do some video game streaming and you promote your podcast. You do your podcast, you promote your video game streaming, and you can kind of start building up these things. And then I have a few other ideas. Like I said, I always have crazy ideas of other ways that you can add money to it and add income streams all over the place, and kind of just focusing on all these ways that I can make money doing things that I really enjoy. And I think that's what that should be the main directive for everybody. And I think that shouldn't be an exception. That should be more of the rule, right? That everyone's doing that. And it should be almost an oddity for someone not to be chasing their passion, just doing something just to pay the bills. And I think that's the world we need to be striving towards. And I think it's just cool to do it, just lead by example and just show people, I don't know. I didn't really know how to do a podcast, but I just figured, I don't know, if other people can do it, I can probably do it. I'll figure it out. And I just tried it, right? That's going to be the same thing with streaming. I have no idea how to stream. I have no idea how to even build that computer. I didn't order any of the parts. I had to get people to help me with it. I don't know the first thing about it or how to build a community, but eventually I'm going to have to figure it out. And I might suck at the start, but eventually I'll get better at it, and just not being scared or allowing yourself to be scared, but then following that fear. Because I think the idea of that scares the shit out of me, of being live in front of people and doing that regularly, like that scares me. But I think that's a good kind of scared, right? And I think I haven't talked about it on the podcast because I was afraid of not being accountable. But at this point, I'm so far into it that I might as well put it out there and start to put a timeline on it, right?
Yeah. There's that podcast accountability back at you.
It's got to be there. It's got to be there. But kind of going back to that, I do think that's a good example of what we're saying too, is supporting it. Because now what you used to see, let's say 8 years ago, if you went and looked at all the big streamers and YouTubers, so many of them would have the story of, I really had to grind. I kind of had to do it in secret. My parents thought I was throwing my life away, and they said they were going to cut my university off if I kept doing the streaming because I wasn't concentrating on school, and they stuck with it, and they really had to show success to really get them to change their minds around. But now you look at these guys that are on the come up, and their parents are in their streams with them, in the chat, like interacting with their community that they built and help psych them up. And I see these videos of these kids, they get a speedrun world record, and their dad runs and they're crying. He's so happy for them because he understands the goal that's going, and you see that it's starting to be supported, and you see these kids. And what's interesting is those ones that have that support of their family around them, they're growing so much faster because you can tell that their parents have helped them grow. And right, these kids that are coming out at 19 with these huge platforms and these huge empires that they built, like you're talking about, but it's because they were supported. And you see the difference of all these parents, and it's nothing to their detriment, right? Like if you're a parent, you're going to have that. It's new to you, and you're going to be a bit worried about it. You're going to have some hesitation in letting your kid chase something like that. But if you can see the passion and you see that it's real, you could support them into something that they'll love for the rest of their life, and you'll bring a lot of happiness to them. It's just it's amazing to see, and I love seeing that nowadays, that you just see these new kids with a full supporting cast going into it. It just fills my heart when I see it. Makes me almost emotional thinking about it. Like, it's just so cool to see that switch in just such a short time, like 5 or 6 years, and it's a completely different landscape, and you're seeing it more and more. And all it took was some people just to show, hey, this is a real path, this is a real opportunity, right? And now these kids can show their parents, hey, look at these, top 10,000 streamers that are all making, 6 figures a year. Like, holy shit. Okay, well, maybe you can do that. Maybe that's not so far-fetched, and they'll actually help you grow and help you support along the way, right? And something else that I think we're probably seeing the same shift in, and maybe you can let me in on this, is something else I want to talk about was DJ. And I kind of want to talk about not only just DJing, but kind of the whole scene in general of EDM. I feel like I got to see it from afar just because of all of our buddies were so into it, and I was the one kind of on the outside. I was always, I a coward. I never went. I always talked about it, and still to this day, me and Chase say we still got to go to a show together because I still do want to go to one. I've
Yeah.
never been. But how did you get into DJing? Do you still have that dream? Do you still get the itch? Do you ever do it? In your day to day, still to this day, or what?
Yeah, I guess okay, we could talk about my journey with that. So
Yeah,
I always, yeah, like I think in high school, like it was actually kind of my cousins that were like really big into the EDM scene, and that was kind of
yeah,
before it started to blow up. Like I remember you hear
mm-hmm.
stories of like, back then Avicii was supposed to play at Tantra nightclub in Calgary, right? And they
Yeah,
got in a dispute. Like he wanted $2,000 to play, and they only wanted to pay him $1,000, so he didn't end up playing that night.
yeah,
So it's like, yeah, back then, like you were talking, like pretty small budget, up and coming, like
mm-hmm.
smaller crowds. They definitely still had like the bigger festivals and stuff, but
Yeah,
it was a little bit more, yeah, underground. And people kind of looked at it weird, like, oh, you rave? Like that's weird. Like, do you just like
yeah,
get fucked on drugs there, and then like
yeah.
suck on soothers and do all this weird shit that people
Cut your
thought
glow
raving was? So
sticks.
that was kind of when I was in junior high school when I started listening to the music, and then sure enough, I turned 18, and then that year I went to Coachella actually, which was not a like a strictly EDM festival by all means. They kind of had
Mm-hmm.
like 7 different stages, and each stage had a different kind of theme around it, right? And like that
Yeah,
year I went was actually like stacked. Like there was so much good music. Like I think the one day we just parked our asses at the one stage because it was like MGMT, City and Color, KG Elephant, Kid Cudi, like just like unbelievable talent, right? So
yeah,
the one day like I went over to like the EDM stage with my buddy, and like I just remember I was like, holy man, like this is something like I've never experienced before. Like the
mm-hmm.
energy here and like the lasers and the lights and like everyone's
Yeah,
dancing and grooving, like it is something else, right? And then that night, like I saw Martin Garrix, and like at that point, like I'm a fresh 18, like I was like, oh my god, it's Martin Garrix, right? Like Animals had just come out. So
yeah,
like it was kind of like right after then where I was like, okay, like this is like this hits me like where live music kind of hasn't before, right? Because I always
yeah,
found like rap was like okay live, but it was like you kind of just stood there and sang along. Like it didn't really like same with like indie and all this stuff. Like it was like,
yeah,
definitely enjoyable to see, but it didn't make you like groove like EDM did, like
yeah,
and just had that energy around it. So then yeah, I kind of like that was in grade 12 when I went to Coachella, and then ever since then I was kind of like pretty into it. Like I'd go to all the big shows. Like kind of at that time, like Calgary really only had like Chasing Summer was the only big festival, so like go to
mm-hmm.
that every year. And Edmonton had quite a big scene actually. So I started working for one of the local promotions companies. So they're called Bootang.
Yeah,
So they would like book the artists, book the venues, kind of put on the
mm-hmm.
show. They'd kind of be the one risking the money and then making the profits, right? So I started
Mm-hmm.
working with them, just selling tickets because it was perfect for me because like all my friends were kind of starting to get into it at the time. So like I had a
Yeah,
pretty big customer base, and then I also like for me like I'd get to go for free and sometimes like go backstage and hang out with the artists and stuff. So it was like the
yeah,
perfect scenario for me, right? And
yeah,
so yeah, like it was pretty cool. And then I think about a year in, yeah, maybe about a year in, like I started talking with this one guy, and he was like kind of a DJ and a promoter on the team, right? And I was
mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, that's so cool that you're like DJing these shows." Like there wasn't a ton of people because it was always at the start, right? And I was like,
Yeah,
"How'd you get into it?" He's like, "Man, like it's pretty easy now. Like all you need to do is just go to like Long and McQuaid music store, like grab
mm-hmm.
you can get just like one that plugs into your laptop, download a software, and then if you've got music download, you can like start mixing." I'm like, "Oh man, like that's super cool." So how long have you been doing this? He's like, oh, I've been doing it like maybe 4 years before I kind of like started actually getting gigs and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, well, I'll tell you what, like grab one of those controllers from the store, and like you can come over and I'll teach you a few things, right? So this was his name was Eric, or DJ Limit is his stage name. So like
Cool.
very good guy, like good friend of mine. We
Yeah,
still we
yeah,
still keep in touch lots, right? So sure enough, I did it. Like went over to his house. He kind of taught me how to mix, right? And then, oh man, like I actually miss these a lot. So it was like me, Portman, and like Trevor Poitras and stuff. And
yeah,
we'd have these
yeah.
like bangers at people's houses where we'd be bringing in
No,
like
I
20-inch
know. Oh,
subs, and we'd just be like lighting the house on fire, man. And like, I don't understand how like these didn't get shut down more, but like they just, yeah, the
it was
tiny
so
house
fun.
crammed with like 50 people. Like I remember like, Like it was like Katie and Sydney Zacharias' old house. Like we had some bangers in
Yeah.
there where like you couldn't move, man. Like you were shoulder to shoulder. There's
Yeah.
people dancing on the
Yeah.
couches and stuff. And that was kind of my first taste for like playing for like a live audience, right? And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
this is awesome, right? So all right, so I like practiced a little more, got a little better, and
Mhm.
sure enough, like I asked the boss, and he was like, okay, like send me a mix, and I'll see. And sure enough, I sent it over and a couple mixes, and he's like, yeah, okay, we'll get you on some shows. So I think my first show was maybe 2016 Christmas, maybe. So like end of second year, or
Yeah.
maybe like start of or end of or start of third year, maybe. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it
yeah.
was because
So
I
it was,
remember because I think I knew you a bit better at that time because
yeah.
I remember seeing you had your first show and that was pretty cool for me to see.
Yeah, so I played for Joyride was the DJ who I was opening for, so I had the 9 to 10 o'clock slot, and it was
Yeah,
hilarious because like there was absolutely no one there except for like I had a good group of friends there. There was like maybe
yeah,
15 of them, so like shout out to the friends that would come at 9 o'clock for my sets, right?
yeah.
Even though it's dead, right? And then yeah, just kind of started like moving up in the ranks and getting like better time slots, and then
Hmm.
kind of I think the highlight for me would have been I played Scream two actually last year's Scream was really good, but 2 years ago at Scream I actually got to play with Eric. Like we played like back to back. So that was
Yeah.
kind of cool to come full circle. Like this guy who kind of taught me how to DJ, like we were playing together now. So
Uh-huh.
that was like that was a really cool experience. And then last year at Scream I played and I think the headliner was like Armin van Buuren, and that was like always like my favorite
That's your
DJ.
favorite, hey? Yeah, yeah.
My name kind of like also with Armin van Buuren's name, like that just was like a little bit special for me too. And
Hmm.
that show was actually a little bit sad too because I knew at that point like I had taken this job in Saudi and I was heading over like
Yeah,
only a week after, so I kind of knew for the time being it was kind of putting the headphones down,
yeah.
which was like it was bittersweet, right? Like it had been a good
Hmm.
run, but I just knew here like they don't have clubs here, right? So like where am I going to DJ, right? They have like
Right.
one music festival a year. Maybe I can try and get on that or something, but like obviously
Yeah,
it's canceled this year, so um but yeah, like in terms of like did I ever think of it as like a pretty like make the career jump? Not really, just because like for one, living in Canada, like it's not the place to be. Like if you want to actually make a run at it, I think you pretty much got to move to like LA,
yeah.
because that's where like the big music scene is, right? So, and then the second thing is like a kind of a common misconception is like, okay, so there's DJing and there's producing, and they're very different. So
Hmm.
DJing is
Yeah,
basically like I'm on stage mixing other people's music. So I'm playing
yeah.
songs by Dead's Dead or Dead Mouse or
Hmm.
Tritonal or whoever, right? And I'm mixing those songs based on certain elements or patterns or melodies that I think the people will like enjoy, right? So that's kind of the goal of the
Hmm.
DJ to pretty much put on a show, make the people dance, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think previously, if you look 20 years ago as a DJ, you needed to have like an extensive record collection and a
Yeah.
very good understanding of how one the technology works, like with just the vinyl turntables and a
Hmm.
good feel for it. Whereas like now things are like so easy, right? You can download music online, you can buy the thing at the store, you can be a DJ in an hour if you want, right?
Hmm.
So, and you can learn all those skills online, like beat matching or all these other kind of elements of DJing. It's
Yeah.
quite easy actually to be a DJ now. Like it's kind of more honestly who you know. Like I had that in with Bootang. If I didn't have that in, I
Yeah.
don't think I ever would have had the opportunities, right? So kind of the other side of that, to bring it back full circle, is the second kind of stream is the producing. So that's where you're actually like sitting and creating like sounds kind of from scratch or with certain
Hmm.
softwares or
Sampling
something,
other
and
shit. Yeah.
building like your own songs, right?
Yeah.
So we've kind of entered this era of DJing where, you know, 20 years ago you had producers and you had DJs and they were kind of separate. So like for example, like really good old DJs would be like DJ Jazzy Jeff or like A Track or
Hmm.
some of these guys. Like I don't know if those names ring bells, but but now we've kind of seen the two kind of merge. Everybody wants to see those producers that they see make out banger tracks, like your Martin Garrix's,
Hmm.
your Jaws, your Calvin Harris's. But when they go see them live, they're DJing, they're not producing, right? But
Right.
they're mixing their own music, right? But because DJing is so easy now, it's easy to kind of come up as a producer. And if you're a good producer, you can learn how to DJ very easily, right?
Yeah.
So what we've kind of had now is this wave of good, like you have to be a producer to make it big. You have to make your
Pretty
own
much, yeah.
music. There's no other way around it. No one will book you if they don't know who you are, and you get known by producing your own music, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of, if I was to actually make a stab at, you know, kind of progressing in my music career, I would have definitely had to make that switch over to producing,
Producing, right?
which is a whole different beast. Like it's a whole
Mm-hmm.
different software you got to learn, and everything's like, you know, if you look at music, usually EDM music has between like 80 and 150 layers of sounds over the entire song. So like that's a pretty complex process, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
sat
Mm-hmm.
down with like a couple people and kind of tried to learn and stuff, but it just, I never had the time for it. Like you can put in like 20 hours pretty easily and kind of get nowhere with it, right? And
Yeah.
like during university, I didn't have that, or I didn't make time for
Mm-hmm.
that. Like I had other things I'd rather do, like go to the gym or hang out with friends or study
Yeah.
and these kind of things.
Dodgeball.
So yeah, dodgeball, big dodgeball guy.
Yeah. Oh, that's funny.
um, yeah, Mac Captain 2016, no big deal. Hey,
Oh, big shot, big shot.
yeah, is that
So,
good or?
oh no, that's awesome, baby. I got a question. So, just knowing so many people that DJ, just you dug in, Poitras, Portman, all those guys, those host parties you talk about. I remember, getting behind the decks with them and just watching them do it and seeing the crowd in front of you and watching them mix it. Like when you drop songs, just that feeling of being behind the deck and watching like a whole party just like be on your wavelength. It's almost like a hypnosis. It was such a cool feeling. How does that feel when you're at something like Scream and you have that many people in front of you? Like, what is that feeling like? Because it was nuts just in a small house party to feel that and just like be part of it, even though I wasn't doing anything. I was just, being a hype man, jumping around like an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, how does that transfer? And what is that? I don't know. Maybe it's impossible to describe, but just what does that feel like to you?
Oh, honestly, man, like the feeling of like being able to make people dance and like something you're up there
Yeah.
creating is like actually like having an impact on, not, we're talking like, if you're having a conversation or something, it's one, two, five, 10 people
Mm-hmm.
maybe, right? But like when I
Yeah.
was up there DJing, like I think my biggest crowd was kind of, I probably didn't hit 1,000, but maybe kind of like high hundreds, like maybe 800, 900
Yeah.
at a max at some of the bigger festivals.
Uh-huh.
Um, like that was, yeah, that feeling of like having people move from what you're doing. Yeah, it's honestly, there was no comparable feeling. Like it wasn't even like a, like in a, you get a certain like sense of like, I feel like a dopamine rush when you like get a good achievement, but
Yeah.
it wasn't even
Mm-hmm.
like that. It was like, it was so much different. And like, yeah, I don't really know how to put it in words. Like the only thing I can, yeah, I don't think I can really compare it to
Yeah.
something. It's
Yeah.
just something that, a feeling that, oh, I miss
Mm-hmm.
dearly, right? And
Yeah, I imagine that'd be hard to give up because like just like the small pieces of seeing like what it was on the small scale. I can imagine that'd be pretty intoxicating and hard to walk away from. Oh,
definitely,
so cool to say that you've done it though too, and doesn't mean you can't ever do it again, right? Like it doesn't, a couple years down the road you might want to pick it up again. Bring the decks out and
yeah,
just go blast some people, even if it's just at a house party or something like. When once COVID's over, of course, but like,
yeah,
man, oh, it's such a cool thing to say that you've done. Um, so then a couple other questions, just so about the whole like EDM scene and stuff. I feel like I definitely had a lot of misconceptions about what it was, and I think a lot of that stemmed from just misunderstanding of that. But like being so close to it, what do you think is at its core that makes it so special? Because it does seem to be filled with a lot of genuine love and actual. I don't know. It sounds so weird to say, but it is based on laws of positivity, and everyone's kind of having a good time together, and it's that hypnosis that everyone gets into. It doesn't matter. Nobody's fighting. Like nobody's pushing and shoving like other concerts. It's just everyone in there together. And where do you think that comes from? Like what is at its core, and what do you think some of the misconceptions that people have about it are?
yeah. That's actually like a pretty interesting question because
Mm-hmm.
like the super shallow, like kind of outside looking in answer was like, oh, it's because everyone doesn't drink, they just do drugs, right?
Right.
Which like I'm not gonna sit here and be like super naive about it. It definitely has something to do with
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
because the way people act on alcohol is usually like not model citizen behavior, right? Like usually
No.
some people get frisky and want to fight, some people
Yeah.
just get sloppy and fall over the place,
Mm-hmm.
right? But when you like run into someone at a show and they're feeling good off something. Like all they want to do is like hug you and tell you they care about you, right? So I think that
Yeah.
definitely like helps for the cause. But I don't know.
Mhm.
I think there's just something, because I even like I wasn't like huge into that. So like I noticed like the shows that I went to sober a lot, like where I was just like maybe taking caffeine pills to stay up because some of them would go till like 6 in the morning, was
Yeah.
I don't know, like you have this kind of like common love for the music and you're dancing and you're
Mhm.
super loose, and at that time you're kind of thinking about nothing else but the music and just being
Yeah.
with your friends. Like it's not like a traditional concert in the sense where they play a song and everyone claps and then you kind of talk
Mhm.
about it with your person beside you, and like it's
Yeah.
a little bit more loosey goosey, right? Like there's a little bit less rules around it, right? So I think maybe that's kind of what contributes to that kind of group love about it. And I don't know. It was just like we had like such a good squad for a while, man. Like
Yeah,
we'd
you
have
guys did. Yeah.
shows where like we had like 20 people out and we had like a group chat going, and it was like every show we'd get a good group
Mhm.
out. And yeah, like I definitely like I reminisce about those times for sure. Like we had a good rave fam going for a while. So
Yeah.
it's sad to see that, that those things aren't happening right now, and I'm sure they'll come back eventually, but it's just, yeah, kind of who knows right now. So, and that was the
Yeah.
other thing, is like when I hung up the headphones, so to speak, kind of for the short term, it I don't know how long it's going to be. Like it probably would have to take me going to a location where like electronic music is a lot more acceptable. But
Mhm.
it kind of like as soon as I hung them up, it was like COVID kind of swung around right after. So it's
Oh,
almost like I
shit.
kind of it's been like bittersweet that I don't have those like
Mhm.
constant memories
Mhm.
coming up of like or in like FOMO and stuff of these shows.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's
This is kind of funny
yeah,
how it
hopefully
works
by
out
the
like that.
time things roll around again, like I'll be in a spot where I can actually like play some shows. And I mean, I'm sure too, like the guys over at Boudang, like Marty is one of the owners, and like
Mhm.
he's a pretty salt of the earth guy. Like he runs a good business there. He cares about his employees and he's always very fair, right? So I bet
Yeah.
if I ever was like coming back to Calgary or Edmonton and I was like, hey, I'd love to get on a show or something, he'd throw me on there, I'm sure, even though,
Yeah.
usually they try and save it for people who are like, selling tickets and making money for them. But yeah, like I'm
Mhm.
sure they wouldn't have any issues with me playing. I'd be rusty as hell, that's for sure. But
Yeah. Yeah. I had to practice in the apartment a couple times before.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
well, some of the funnest times I remember was just being in Duggan's apartment there and just having all the boys just take turns just switching. There's like 4 or 5 of us in the apartment. Definitely don't know how this didn't get shut down because we'd be doing it at like 3 in the morning in an
yeah,
apartment building, just blasting music, but just like getting the boys fired up. We're all just jumping around this apartment like idiots, having somebody just do it. It's almost like, and here's maybe something I can throw by is of just from an outsider's perspective of guessing what it is. It's almost like you can just disconnect and go along, right? Like a comedy show, lots of comedians talk about it as a group hypnosis. They're just, I'm gonna think for you for an hour. Just let go, let me take you where I want to take you. And it's almost that with music and with dance, and you let go of all your thoughts and your worries, and you're just dancing for that time. And then also, I think that dance has a lot more power than we think it does. Over the last couple of years, I've
for
heard
sure,
a
for
lot of people
sure.
talk about dance as a therapy and ecstatic dance therapy and all these things. And really hit a chord with me when I found out that I was getting this job in Grand Prairie. It was end of end of June. No, start. It was the start of June. Uh, no, mid June. Anyway, it doesn't really matter. That I found out about this job and that'd be happening. It was supposed to be set for September 15th. We were gonna come here and I would take over. So the month of July, I went to Grand Prairie, looked at houses, found a house, signed for it, and then also planned a trip to Europe for all of August. So it was like
Right.
July 28th to August 30th or something. And right before I left on the trip, it got moved up, so I was taking over September 1st. So I was going to land, come home, pack all my shit, move to GP, and I was taking over like right then. And I was scared shitless, and I was going on my first trip. I'd never traveled on my own, like without other friends or family. It was my first time going through Europe, and I was quite nervous about it. And it was with a tour group called Kentucky. And actually, I think I'm going to have on one of the guys that was on the trip with me and our tour guide onto the podcast to kind of tell some stories about that trip because it was a
Yeah.
lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and I'm excited to get to that. But the point I'm trying to make was it was the first time being away from everybody, and I was always I love to dance. I still love to dance. I would dance growing up around the house all the time, just never in front of people. I hated the embarrassment of it, right? Unless I was really drunk, that would be the only time I would dance. But on this trip, being around everybody that didn't matter, even before I was drunk, like I kind of got into dancing and just enjoying it for the love of dancing. And by the end of the trip, every time we got to a bar, even before I was drunk, I would be the first one on the dance floor, bringing everyone out there and just having a great old time. And it was such a changing. It felt like an actual change in my being, just like that. It's almost that shedding of that self-conscious of people looking at you and really giving a fuck about it. It's like this real physical way that you can shed that off and just kind of throw it to the side and just enjoy it just because you're having fun doing it. And if you can get to that point, I bet, and probably a lot of people, like you say, not to be naive, probably the drugs have a little bit to do with that. But I mean, however you get there, if the effects afterward if you can take what you could out of it, like I did, who cares how you got there? Fuck, that's a really great thing to get to, that idea of not caring what people are looking at you for and just living your life and having fun. It's so much more than just dance. But I found that it was hugely impactful on me and on the rest of my life. I think ever since then, I feel like I've been a different person ever since I had that shift. And I think that's another piece of what that culture is just letting people be themselves and nobody's judgment. It's just such a judgment-free zone. And I feel like that's something that makes it so special.
Yeah, I would definitely concur that like it's for sure a judgment-free zone. Like it's really exciting. Like take someone new and like kind of experience with that too, because like usually when you bring them in there, they're kind of like, oh, what the heck is going on here? Like it's
everyone's
so
just going
alien. But like you can see them like quickly kind of like loosen up and jam
start to
and
shake
stuff.
a shoulder a little bit.
Yeah, exactly, and kind of just enjoy it. And yeah, it's so social in that aspect, and it's hard to kind of put a finger on a button to why it's like it sets itself apart so much from other live music.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think the dancing element of it for sure, because like for example, if you go to a John Mayer concert, you're not dancing, right? Like you're just sitting there and
this guy.
Yeah.
I'm an
if
ultimate
you
John Mayer fanboy.
yeah, or if you go, like a rap concert, I guess you're kind of getting into it. But I found like concerts, especially like when they're in seated venues, like you're just so restricted. So it's just more of the audio aspect of it. But like the shows and the raves are always like in a big like open place or like a club or something, right? So, but I think what sets it apart from the club atmosphere is like I think clubs like draw in like some, they're not all bad, but like the reason why people go to clubs not often is just to dance. So but whereas an EDM show, like that's much more the focus is like most people are just there to have fun and dance with their friends, right? Whereas if you have some guy in there that's being a skis ball or something, like usually people call him out and be like, get out of here, man, like what are you doing? Like whereas like clubs, like that's pretty common, right? So
I hear you. Oh, that all makes sense, and that's interesting to think about. I feel like I definitely missed out because you guys were such a big community. There's so many of you that go to all those raves, and I never went to one. Like, and I always told Chase, like, I'll definitely go with you to one. Like, I'll go.
Yeah.
I never did. And now COVID's happened, and we were just actually talking about it last weekend. That like we definitely, as soon as COVID's over, we're going to travel somewhere and go see Zed's Dead together. Maybe go to Dead Rocks or see them at the Gorge Amphitheater, or go to some real nice venue down the street.
Yeah.
Because I definitely have to experience it once, especially after, kind of getting rid of that self whatever about dancing. Now that I really enjoy it, like I just feel like it'd be such a cool experience to go to. But something that you kind of sparked in my head when you brought up John Mayer, just because that's probably one of my biggest guilty pleasures. Like I'm a fucking John Mayer till I die. I love John Mayer so much. Speaking of the Gorge Amphitheater, I drove like 18 hours to the Gorge Amphitheater just to see him play with the Grateful Dead. Like,
man, that would have been good.
It was so. I can't even explain how good it was. I fucking love that guy, and I love that band and just what they do. But got me thinking. A question I kind of had, and I was thinking about asking lots of people, because I like to see the real esoteric things that people are into, like the I almost want to like put it into like a form of like if you were on Jeopardy, what would be the categories that you'd want to come up that you knew that other people wouldn't get, but you would just knock out of the park, right? Like for me, like John Mayer would be a perfect one. If John Mayer came up there, I'd be like, oh, I got this. And like these people aren't going to know this, right? Where if it's something like hockey, well, there's lots of people that know a lot about that. What do you think? Like if you were on Jeopardy, what would you be pumped to see come up that is kind of particular to you? Like probably shoes would be one, but what else? What are your guilty pleasures that you know a lot about that maybe other people wouldn't, or you wouldn't guess a lot of people would know a lot about?
Oh man, that's a hard question. Like, yeah,
That
definitely
is a tough
sneakers would be
question.
on there. I think, yeah, like EDM music and like
For
that
sure,
whole
yeah.
scene for sure is
Yeah.
another element. But oh man, other than that, I'm trying to think like what I'm into that's like kind of
Mhm.
unique. Like, no, nothing really comes to mind, which is kind of a
Yeah.
coward answer. But
Yeah, no, that's all right.
uh,
That's all good. I
I don't know. I'm actually like pretty big into surfing. Like
oh yeah?
I watch the big ones, and yeah, like I kind
Yeah.
of like I love surfing in itself. Like I think surfing is like the ultimate therapeutic sport. Like there is when
Oh,
you
for
are like
sure.
up on a board and you're catching a wave
Mhm.
and you just have that like buoyancy factor along with like usually you're in tropical environments. There's nothing compared,
Uh-huh.
nothing,
And they
right?
talk about that
So
as the ultimate sport for like that flow state that you get into where you're just
yeah,
locked into that whatever brainwave it is that locks you into a theta wave or theta state. I don't know what it is, but they always. I think that's where they started to study it was with surfers because when you're up on that wave and you're in that barrel, you're just completely in that flow state, and that's what they're trying to study on how they get into it that quickly and that repetitively, right? Like they can get into it every time, and they start to do that into other sports. That's super cool. So, is there one of those like surfing places near you, like those kind of ones with the big, like not fake waves because it's an actual wave, but like artificially generated waves? I would assume that somewhere in the UAE there'd be something like that kicking.
yeah. I come to think of it, like I haven't heard of any places like that, but like UAE
Yeah,
would definitely be the place to have something like
for
that. But
sure. They got crazy shit, hey?
yeah, I don't know. I think maybe because we're kind of tucked into kind of like the west side of the Indian Ocean, maybe we don't get a ton of wave action. And if you look at like, where Saudi Arabia has ocean access, it's kind of an inlet.
Mm,
It's like is it the Red Sea or is that on the other side? No, it's the
no
Gulf.
idea.
I think it's the Gulf.
Oh,
So, like Yemen and Oman are the ones that would have more kind of direct ocean spots, but I don't
right.
even know if they have like
Surfing.
surfable waves. But yeah, no, like I definitely think like one day I'd love to kind of get to a spot where like surfing can be a little bit more of a like a regimented part of
Regularity.
my life. Like I went
Yeah.
and visited did you ever meet Connor like Farquhar in
Oh
Lister?
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so like when Laura and I were over in Australia, we like met up with him a little bit. He's living on in the Gold Coast doing law school there, and
Nice.
like just to be in a place like that where like you have waves on a constant basis, like that's kind of that would be a really cool spot to
Yeah.
get to, I think, in my life. But unfortunately, it just seems like those places are generally either like you don't have oil there usually, so like my
Yeah.
my my CV doesn't really match up too good with that. But hopefully one day, like once the borders open up a little bit more, maybe I'll like kind of buy a place or like
Mm-hmm.
get more like I'll just have like a 4 week surf trip booked somewhere or something, right? But yeah, growing
Yeah.
up in
Go
Calgary
on a
too is
coaster
also really
weekend.
tough
Sure.
because the closest place was Tofino, right? And that was
Mm-hmm.
even like you'd have to fly there, and so it definitely wasn't something. And boat surfing is kind of what we do like instead, I guess, where you just have
Mm-hmm.
like the big wake behind the boat, and but it's
Yeah.
it's not even close to me. I don't
Yeah.
know,
It's,
like
it's
boat
definitely
surfing
not
just
the
equates to
same.
me like partying and drinking beers on the
Yeah.
boat and
Having
stuff,
beers. Yeah. Yeah.
which like
100%.
does not equate to like surfing on the ocean to
Yeah.
me. So
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely a lot different. It's still fun in its own way, and it's definitely a super enjoyable thing to do, and has blown up like crazy. I remember a couple of years ago, we were one of the first people because we always go to Penticton, and that's where
yeah,
we go on Skaha, and we were one of the first ones to have one of those wake surfs, and boats were coming up, checking out what you're doing because you have no rope, and they're like, "What are you doing? Like
yeah,
that's crazy." And and then next year it was like, oh, you'd see quite a few people. Now you never see people wakeboarding anymore. Nobody wakeboards. It's a dead
yeah,
sport. It almost
yeah,
died immediately, right? It's all the crazy fuckers that don't mind doing a toe pick and smashing their face on the water and getting about 4 gallons up the nose. Those wild coyotes. But everyone else is just surfing, right? Because it doesn't hurt. You're going so slow. It doesn't hurt to fall. It's 10 times easier to get up than wakeboarding. It's so much fun. You can talk to people in the back of the boat. Like it's got so many things going for it that it actually killed like a whole sport. Like I haven't seen somebody wakeboard in years now, and you see
Yeah,
just like 30 boats out at any one time, all surfing, right? And you can do it in way choppier water too because you're so close to the boat. Like it's got so much going for it. Oh,
for sure. I think like the big
definitely
barrier to entry for it is just like the overall cost of the boat. Like I know
for
the boats that
sure.
you need the big
Mm-hmm.
ballasts on, like the
Yeah,
Malibus and like the
yeah,
Tijas and all those. Like I don't know if
mm-hmm.
I'm saying it right, but those are all like $100,000 boats, right? But I guess like if you
Mm-hmm.
look at the type of people who are out on who have cabin properties and have boats to begin with are generally pretty affluent too. So you know, like a
Yeah,
$50,000 boat to $100,000 boat maybe isn't the biggest deal for them. But yeah, I totally know what you mean. Like when we were out in the Okanagan this summer, it was like, you know, anyone want a wakeboard? No one puts their hands up. Everyone want to, okay, we'll get the surfing going. Everyone, yeah,
yeah. Let's
everyone's
go. Let's
pumped
go.
up
Fill the
and
ballast. Yeah.
yeah, and yeah, like you're right. I think there's a bit of more of a social aspect too because you can like kind of interact with the boat, whereas like
Mm-hmm.
wake surfing and water skiing and tubing and that you're pretty far back there, so you don't really have that same interaction. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of interesting. I never thought of it that way. So
Mm-hmm. And then also when you're like wakeboarding, you're doing like 25 mile an hour, so there's a bit of wind. It's kind of even when you're on the boat, you can't really talk not only to the person on there, but it's hard to converse and stuff sitting there. When you're surfing, you're doing what like 8 miles an hour or something. Like it's just a nice steady pace. It's easy to sit on the back. You can hand drinks around, have some snacks. It's just such a cool environment. I mean, like man, it's funny they
oh
didn't
yeah,
think of that before. Like it's funny that things like that just pop out of nowhere, and then eventually, 2 years later, and it's everywhere.
oh
It's
man, it
funny to
was like
see.
it's funny you talk about like passing drinks around because like this summer, yeah, we were out on I think it was in the Okanagan somewhere, in one of the smaller lakes, but we rented a surf boat. I was with like Laura's
Mhm.
family, right? And she got up and she was like surfing pretty good, right? And she all of a sudden rips up to the boat like, oh, grab me a beer, right? So we like pass her a beer, right?
Yeah.
Rips back into the wake and then like fucking just shotguns it like a beauty, right? And then comes back in, puts the can in, and like I just had my GoPro out too, so I like caught it all on video too. So I was like,
Nice.
it was perfect, right? So yeah, like I actually been starting a bit of a YouTube channel with some of my traveling videos because I want to have like a better, you know, like I find when you take videos and pictures right now, like they could just go on your phone and they just
Yeah.
sit there. You don't really like look at them, and that's what I think kind of the beauty of Instagram too is like it's kind of a photo album for you. Like sometimes I'll
Hmm.
just reminisce
Hmm.
and go look through my Instagram and look at all my travel pictures and or like fun stuff I was doing in the summer. So yeah, like
Yeah.
I kind of wanted to have like a better place for me to like not only for me to enjoy but like other people to enjoy if they were on these trips for me.
Yeah.
So I was gonna start trying to make some like travel videos and stuff. So it was definitely challenging, like figuring out how YouTube works and like movie creators and editing software and figuring out how to
Tell
get
me
good
about it.
shots. Like I still haven't like I just like dip my toes in barely with the GoPro. Like the functionality on those things is crazy too. So
Yeah. And what's the name of your YouTube channel? People want to go check it
so
out.
YouTube channel is just Kyle Cuggy. So the
Yeah.
typical name people call me. So
Cugggy. And yeah,
yeah,
no, I definitely know. I definitely have seen the heartaches of trying to figure out YouTube. I just recently got the VonDubCast people listening now. This episode
yeah,
should be up on YouTube. It just got everything up on there. It took me about 20 minutes to figure out how to upload one episode. I sent it all to Brendan, who was helping me out. He had them all done in like I don't know how long, but it took him way shorter. He had them all done up like exactly how I wanted. I was like, oh, you are a wizard at this. I just and eventually I'm sure I would get to that point too, but just so far away from it. But it's nice to
yeah.
have that just one goal done. I was getting a little bit not upset about it, but just it felt like I was doing the same thing for the podcast over and over, and I was getting better at it, and I can feel myself getting more comfortable with it. But felt like I hadn't made any big strides forward and actually making structural changes or structural advances to make the podcast better. And I feel like it's such a
Mhm.
nice relief to have something like the YouTube channel checked off because I have so many more things I want to do. But that was one of the big ones holding me back was that YouTube channel because now I can maybe try and get a video component right. Like, oh, I didn't record this one, but like just on these Zoom ones, recording the video and getting someone to take the high quality audio with the mixing and dub it back over the video and putting that up on YouTube, or when I do live ones in person, get some sort of camera system and set it up and actually get a video component of the podcast. Like I'm just excited to take it to new levels and try those new things. It's just it's definitely a learning curve on lots of these things. Like just YouTube, you think that'd be pretty easy. People are figuring YouTube out all the time, but it's definitely more to it than you'd think.
Definitely, yeah. I even found like there's so much like subtleties that you didn't realize would be difficult. Like
Mm-hmm.
for example, like making a thumbnail, you know, like the little
Yeah,
side image, right? like for you, I guess it was pretty easy because you got your logo, right? But for me, for
I
these
just use my
videos, like I
logo
was
for
like,
everything.
oh, like I gotta make like something that like kind of pops out at you, not just like a generic picture I got from the trip, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, like all these like little outlets kind of have so many different learning curves to them. But
Mm-hmm.
if you put the time in, like I noticed for me, I've only done like the 2 videos now, but the first video took a long time. The second video was probably about half. So hopefully, like that just continues
Keeps
now.
going.
Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I even found like actually the biggest challenge was, I just kind of wanted one of those like super generic, corny, like tropical house song, summer vacation, boom, put it together,
Yeah.
right? Um, and just figuring out like YouTube copyright laws with music, right? Because I wasn't using like my
Mm-hmm.
own music. So
Right.
like there's a bunch of different scenarios about like if you're using this person's music and they're this type of artist, and like even just like learning about that was like a solid probably like 3 hours kind of figuring out, okay, what
Right.
can I use and what can I use
Mm-hmm.
but I might get screwed later, or what's like fair game, right? So
Yeah. And they don't piss around with those copyright strikes too. Like you can mess up, accidentally post something on accident, and you get a strike, and you're only allowed 3, and they kill your whole channel. I mean, I don't know this for sure, but I've just heard so many YouTubers talk about just the tightrope they're walking, and they'll get a strike for something that shouldn't have even been, but there's no way to walk it back and figure it out. And, kind of a scary thought, but I guess
definitely,
that's
yeah.
the where else are you going to go? Vimeo? I mean, it's pretty much the only game in town. They're pretty stuck to YouTube if you want. I mean, I think there's some ones coming up in the world that are supposedly trying to, make an impact and be a secondary station to YouTube. But I don't know. I haven't seen any that have made any waves yet. So we'll see.
Definitely.
We'll see. So yeah, no, that's awesome to have you back on. I think that's all the things I had to go over, and I'm getting a little bit sleepy here. It's 12:40 here, and I don't think I've been up past 10 at night for a couple months. That's why I had to keep chugging those teas throughout the thing. That's my go-to now that I've quit the Diet Pepsi for the time being. I'm trying to get into tea. It's pretty
Yeah.
tasty, but I think I left the tea bag in the second one for too long here.
Yeah.
She's pretty strong. She's pretty strong here. I might be up till about 2 a.m. here. But was there anything else you wanted to go over, Cuggy, that we didn't talk about? Anything that we missed last time we didn't catch up on this one?
No, I think that was a pretty good episode. Like, it seems like I had
Oh,
some good topics there, kind of all across the board. I
yeah.
guess one thing I wanted to plug is like me and a couple of my buddies are doing a Movember campaign.
Oh, yeah.
So we're raising some money for men's mental health, and
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, we're running as a team. I think we're already up to like we're only a week in, and we're already up to like $1,500 or something, like pretty close to
Wow.
that. So we're doing really good this year.
Awesome.
This is I think my 4th year doing Movember, so I don't really grow good facial hair, but my mustache is like a soft pass. Like it's
Yeah.
okay. It's barely okay, you know.
It's got
So
it's got the
but
chiz. It
if
doesn't
if
have the
I can look
fam.
like a clown for a month and raise some money for the fellas, like that's a win in my book. So yeah, if anyone wants to donate, they can check out the Facebook page. I got the link set up on there. They can contact me directly. If it's $2 or $20 or $200, it all counts. So I think we set our goal for 2 grand, but I think we're gonna hit that pretty easily. So we might have to
Nice.
bump that up again. So
Nice. Well, we'll definitely send some people your way, and I'll make sure I get that link from it. I'll put it in the podcast notes so people can find it. That's a great idea. Anything else other than that you want to plug? We got your YouTube channel. You got anything else on the go? Any more side hustles?
yeah, I guess if anyone needs sneakers, hit me up. If you
Oh
got
yeah,
something in
I
mind,
forgot about
I'll
that.
help them there.
Yeah. Oh,
Usually if
fuck,
it's like
that's a
a
great
good
one.
friend of mine, I won't like charge a commission
Finder's
or
fee.
nothing. Like I'll just
Yeah.
do it out of the goodness of my heart. So giving
Yeah.
back to the community, right?
Yeah. You gotta always give back. Oh, that's awesome. Oh fuck. Well, thanks for coming on again. I'm sure you'll be on many times over the years. It's nice to have you back on, catch up again, and we'll have to do it soon. I'm looking forward to maybe sometime in the future we'll get you and Chase or you and FO on and get a little 3-way action going and get some of those old
Oh
stories from the
man.
good old days in Lister going.
Yeah. You could put me, you, and FO. If we threw a bottle of Pink Whitney in there, I'm sure we'd let it fly pretty good.
Oh yeah. Maybe we could do that one in person one of these days. Get us all back. He's down in Oakland. You're over in Saudi Arabia. I'm up here in Grand Prairie. We got to do a connection here at one point and get us all in the same place.
Yeah, maybe we'll have to meet in London, like halfway, but for all of us. So
I am always down for London. I love it there. It's so nice. I always
yeah.
have this weird feeling that I'm going to end up living there at some point in my life. Ever since I was a kid, I had this weird feeling that in Australia that at some point I'm going to live there. But who knows? maybe that'll be the time. But yeah, like I said, thanks again for being on. Have a ton of fun. I always have fun bullshitting with you and always fun catching up. So yeah, thanks again, Kyle.
Definitely, Nick. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Anytime.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for listening. That's another episode in the books. Another fun one. Got some more fun ones coming. Really excited to show you guys those ones. Like I said, I'm trying to find my way. I want to bring sponsorship onto the podcast and have it be not entirely deficit funded by episode 50. So I'm just starting that early, making sure I'm just laying it out every episode, the intro, the outro, just to let people know that is something I'm interested in bringing on. I have some really cool ideas. If you do have a little startup, or even just someone personally trying to get a YouTube page or an Instagram page started and want a little bit of a boost. Not that I have crazy numbers to throw it out to, but I think I have a couple ideas for ways to make it even though it wouldn't be going to, 1 million people, the people that it does get to, they would actually get a really good idea of what it is, and probably be really meaningful kind of advertising, not as widespread, but really targeted. And it comes from somebody that listens to this every week and trusts what I have to say, because I'm not going to bring on anything I don't believe in. So I'm really excited for what I can do. I have some really cool ideas, and I'm really, I have a lot of faith in what I can do on the advertising side and the ideas I have to monetize this product. So just looking for an opportunity for somebody that wants to come on. I don't want to ever force somebody. So if you know somebody, or you have a product that you'd like to advertise on here, let me know, and we can run some ideas by you. Especially right off the start, I'm not going to be asking very much out of people. It'd probably just be more of the opportunity just to see and troubleshoot kind of the ideas I have, and find a really good advertising setup that works for both parties. So yeah, I'm excited about that. And I have some really cool ideas in the future. I can't wait to, like I say every week, I'm very impatient, and I want all these things to be coming to fruition right away, but it's starting to see the small steps forward on some of the bigger ideas here. I'm trying to hold back what I want to say and not want to say. All my craziness, I can't keep track sometimes of what I've said already on the podcast and what I've been kind of keeping to myself. But who cares? You guys will be seeing it all in the future. And so thank you guys for listening to another episode. And hopefully, when I get a little bit more time, I can start to try and get more episodes in the bank, so I can start going back to maybe releasing 2 in a week. But just as of lately, it's been tough enough to keep 1 on the books every week. So 2 has been a little bit outside of my comfort zone with the time I have available. But trying to work back into that too. And big things coming. So thanks again, and I'll talk to you guys next week.